worry about
Right.
being there every single time.
Yeah.
They're already raising hands. So what time is it? Oh, it's after time, right? I better mute.
So,
All right. I'll talk to you later. Have
Yeah.
fun.
Me too.
Learn a lot.
You
Enjoy.
too. Enjoy.
Okay.
Right, and you can use the microphone, turn it on and speak into it, close.
Oh, yeah.
Sound. All right, can everyone hear me? Oh, turn this off. Maybe with a blower off.
I think, yeah, you have to hold it close and speak right into
No,
it.
it's not. Yes, sir. It might work.
Oh, my ears are bad. Hold it closer.
Okay, there you go. Here we go. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call this July 16th, 2024 meeting of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission to order and read the ground rules for this meeting. The courts have adopted a policy of fundamental fairness to assure that every interested party is given a fair opportunity to hear, review, submit, and comment on the testimony and evidence that the Planning and Zoning Commission will ultimately use to render a decision. The applicant's presentation should not have time limits imposed, as it is the applicant's burden to lay out all the facts that would support an approval. The public must be allowed to speak at a public hearing. However, the chair may place reasonable limits on the privilege to keep speakers on topic and within time limits. 5 minutes is recommended when there are large audiences. The courts have made it clear that public sentiment is not a proper basis for a decision. Planning and Zoning Commission must simply determine whether an application complies with the applicable regulations. Therefore, the chair may limit comments that will not help in that determination, such as personal attacks on the character of an applicant or statements regarding matters outside of the agency's proper jurisdiction. All speakers, including commissioners, must be recognized by the chair before being allowed to speak. As a reminder, we on the commission are here to listen and to ask questions of the applicant. We should refrain from conversations with attendees. I ask that all cell phones be silenced during the meeting. During the public hearing, I insist that we treat each other respectfully and follow the required structure of the meeting. The following steps for conducting a public hearing are: step 1, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explaining to the commission and attendees what is being requested. The applicant or staff will share all application materials on the screen as needed. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. Step 2, commissioners will ask clarifying questions. Before speaking, each commissioner will be recognized by the chair. Step 3, attendees will have an opportunity for clarifying questions and comments. Anyone who wishes to speak must raise their hand and be recognized by the chair before they speak. For Zoom attendees, please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. As this public hearing must be recorded, attendees will state their names and addresses before asking their questions or making statements. Step 4, the applicant will have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners and must be given the opportunity to speak again without interruption. Once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has a right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Land Use Department at 203-245-5631 after 9 a.m. Seated this evening are commission members: Jeff Downs, maybe raise your hands when I call you, we're doing alphabetically. John Duza, John Morgan, Bob O'Connor on Zoom, and Janet Peckinpah on Zoom, Bob Reinhardt, Andy Rubin, and myself, Carol Snow, Chair. Staff present this evening is Erin Mannix, our town planner. This meeting is live streamed on YouTube and will be made available on the town website for viewing, and the town planner will now read the legal notice. Erin, over to you.
Thank you. Notice is hereby given that the Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a special meeting for a public hearing on Tuesday, July 16th, 2024, beginning at 6 p.m. in Meeting Room A, the James Madison Room, Town Campus, 8 Campus Drive, Madison, Connecticut, 06443. Overflow seating will be available in Meeting Room C, the Hammonasset Room at Town Campus. This is a hybrid meeting, and attendees may also join via Zoom webinar through either the webinar link or call-in information below. The webinar ID is 915-8196-6735. The password is 452138. The call-in number is 1-646-558-8656. The following application hearing will reconvene. 24-10, 6 Opening Hill Road and Indigo Trail, map 70, lots 1-1 and 1-14, zone RU1, owner applicant Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, Inc., special exception pursuant to section 5.4A and 3.4C for philanthropic and educational use of the property, which use includes arts, architecture, and other philanthropic and educational exhibits, meetings, tours, on-site residencies, events, studio, and collaborative space, applicant's administrative office, and a museum/gallery store. All is more specifically and fully set forth in the statement of use and project description as amended, which is included with the application and on file with the Planning and Zoning Commission. This meeting is continued from May 16th, 2024 and June 20th, 2024. Copies of this application are available for inspection in the Land Use Office. Further details on how to participate in the webinar are posted on the Town of Madison website, MadisonTV.org. All written correspondence can be submitted to the Land Use Department via email, landuse@MadisonTV.org. Dial 203-245-5631 for assistance. Dated at Madison, Connecticut, this 3rd day of July, 2024, Carol Snow, Chair. This was published in The Source on July 11th, 2024.
Thank you, Erin. And I want to apologize to Mike Bugda. I didn't see that you came in. I was expecting you to sit here. So we have another Commissioner, Mike Bugda, to introduce to you all.
Thank you, Karen.
I also want to just do a quick recap on the scheduling. The public hearing was open May 16th and continued to June 20th, but then further continued an extension granted to this special meeting on July 16th, for which the legal notice was posted on July 5th and printed in The Source on July 11th. And I anticipate that it may go on beyond tonight, but we'll see how the evening goes. And before we invite the applicant to present, there is one more matter to be addressed regarding requests from opponents that I recuse myself. So I'd like to read the following statement. Several Madison residents have expressed their concerns of possible conflict of interest and bias in my role as chair of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission for this application. Their emails are now part of the record for the application for 24-10 6 Opening Hill Road. Therefore, I feel compelled to respond for the record. First, I grew up in Madison, graduated from Daniel Hand High School, and I am familiar with the Opening Hill Road neighborhood. I'm honored to serve as second-generation chair of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission, which currently consists of 9 dedicated members from diverse professional backgrounds that inform our discussions and decisions. Second, I worked for over 40 years in the field of conservation of cultural heritage, not environmental conservation, for major museums, government, and private clients, as well as on archaeological sites around the Mediterranean. I worked at the Yale University Art Gallery from 2008 until my retirement in 2019. At no time during my long career did I benefit financially or know anyone from the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation. Third, my introduction to the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation occurred during their informal discussion at the March 7th, 2024 Madison Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, when Foundation President Michelle Napick provided background information via Zoom. In sum, there is no conflict of interest. I bring experience, knowledge, and an open mind, not bias, in reviewing this application and any application that comes before the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. So Erin, I'd like to pass this down to you for the public record. And with that taken care of, I would like to invite will be Attorney McKeon to continue presentation of this application.
Thank you. Do I need the mic?
Yes, I would recommend using the mic. Thank you.
Should be on.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Chris McKeon. My law firm is located at 900 Chapel Street in New Haven. I'm a resident of Madison as well. I live on Hotchkiss Lane. I've lived in the town since 1995, which is almost 30 years, as I was just calculating. A couple of preliminary matters, but I do want to introduce our speakers tonight. With me is Michelle Napick, the president of the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, and Rini Bisa, also with the foundation. Mike Ott is our civil engineer from Summerhill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors. He is attending by Zoom. He will review and discuss the site plan and septic design.
Excuse me, Attorney McKeon, could you speak louder? I'm getting word that it's a little harder to hear. If you just hold it
Okay.
nice and
Is that
close.
better?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So Mike Ott is our civil engineer. He will be reviewing and going through the site plan and septic system design that he did, and which was submitted yesterday or this morning. Nina Peak is the U.S. Manager of Planning from SLR International Corporation. She's also a certified planner, American Institute of Certified Planners. Dave Sullivan is the U.S. Manager of Traffic and Transportation. By the way, Nina will be presenting via Zoom. Dave Sullivan, also with SLR International Corporation, is the U.S. Manager of Traffic and Transportation Planning. He has submitted a traffic study, which is of record, but Dave is here in person to present. Last but not least is Mark Nadeau, who is a real estate appraiser who has done a valuation impact study, which is also of record, and he is here to summarize and present that. Just a couple of items preliminarily that I wanted to follow up with. As you recall, last meeting, we had presented our application and the uses and described them, but at the commission's request, we yielded to allow Attorney Pellegrino to present at least a portion of the position of some of the neighborhood and folks who are opposing the application. Some of the things I didn't get to is what I'd like to accomplish now. The first is I'd like to introduce into evidence a copy of the title insurance policy that insures the title to the real estate that is owned by the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation. And the purpose of that is to indicate that the deed restrictions, which are referenced in the PowerPoint and are referenced in a number of letters to the commission, with the suggestion or allegation that by applying for the uses we are seeking to implement at the site, we're breaching a deed restriction that says that the properties can only be used for single-family residences. The title policy here confirms that those restrictions do not apply to the 6 Opening Hill parcel. You'll note that our application includes 2 parcels. The 6 Opening Hill parcel is a large 6-acre parcel, and then there's a small strip of land that is not nearly big enough to be a building lot, but it is part of the ownership that the foundation has, and it's a narrow strip along Indigo Trail that the deed restrictions include in the legal description. So there's an argument to be made that that little strip of land is subject to the deed restrictions. I don't think it's a good argument because the deed restrictions apply to the lots in the subdivision known as Indigo Woods. And many who may live in subdivisions know that there are usually and typically restrictions which talk about what you can or can't do. Some prohibit sheds or clotheslines or outbuildings. Those particular restrictions limit the lots in the Indigo Woods subdivision to single-family residence use. So the small strip of land, which is part of this application, is the only part of the foundation's property that could arguably be governed by those restrictions. Again, I don't think they apply to a excess parcel of land like this that is not a lot. But to avoid that from even being an issue for you, and so that we don't need to talk about it again, we're going to withdraw that strip of land from our application so that it now would be clear that there is no deed restrictions affecting the 6-acre parcel. So with that, I'd like to introduce a copy of the title insurance policy as an exhibit for the record, if I may.
Thanks.
The next point I wanted to make, if you recall, at the May 16th meeting, we needed to appear before ACA because of the way our special exception regulations read. Even though we're not proposing any new buildings that typically ACA would review, we did appear before ACA on June 11th. The minutes are public record, although I don't know that they have been approved yet. So I don't want to submit copies of those minutes because I don't know that they're officially approved. I attended that meeting on June 11th, and the proposed minutes indicate that Mr. Cunningham made a motion to endorse the project and the preservation of the buildings, with the note that any changes to parking, lighting, landscaping might need a further review by ACA should that occur in the future. And the other two members, Mr. Provence and Mr. Williams, Matt Williams, concurred with that recommendation. So we have checked that box, and ACA did review our application. The final point is with respect to the rescheduling or continuing of tonight's hearing. And I know that Ms. Mannix read the legal notice, and that the legal notice appeared in the July 11th edition of The Source. It appeared on the town's website. The notice appeared, I think, July 5th. And Attorney Pellegrino submitted a letter on July 8th indicating that there may be some procedural defect in the rescheduling or continuing of the hearing tonight to a special meeting. In that letter, and I presume that all the commissioners read that, what is absent from the letter is the fact that on June 20th, when you continued this hearing with the agreement and extension from the applicant, it had indicated that the hearing would not be heard this evening, meaning June 20th, and it is continued to July 18th or an earlier special meeting date and location that will be adequately posted by the commission. So the suggestion that everybody thought it was July 18th is just not accurate, number one. Attorney Pellegrino's letter doesn't include the information, which is the exact quote that I just read. The notice, as I understand it, was town council was consulted to make sure that adequate notice was given, and that is publishing on the town website, and it also is publishing in The Source, albeit on July 11th, which was last Thursday. We took, as the applicant, took the additional step of mailing the continuation and the legal notice of tonight's proceedings to all of the folks within 500 feet, and that certificate of mailing is of record. So I just want to, for the record, state that our position is that this special meeting is in fact legally convened and notice was and is adequate. I would note that in the same July 11th source, there was some paid advertising supporting the denial of our application, which in and of itself identifies the fact that the hearing is supposed to be on July 18th, but it does say in parentheses to verify. So whoever was responsible for that ad obviously knew that July 18th wasn't exactly the date that it was going to be continued to, and that it was subject to an earlier special meeting. So with that, I would like to turn the presentation over to Mike Ott, our civil engineer, so he can walk through the site plan traffic system.
Hey, Mike.
No, okay, good evening. Just for the record, I know Attorney McCann said this, but just for the record again, I am Michael Ott. I am a licensed professional engineer and licensed land surveyor. And my office is here in Madison at 60 Wall Street. I will give the commission a little context. My plan for the presentation will be very brief. Please stop me if you have any questions as I go. I plan to show the commission the site, give some context for the site using the town's geographic information system, and then show the commission the site plan that we prepared for the site and the subsurface sewage disposal system that we've also prepared. So may I share my screen?
That up to be Aaron or?
No, he can.
Yes,
Permission.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So can the commission and the audience see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So just for zooming out for context, and I'm quite sure that everyone in the room is familiar with this, of course, but this is the site that I've just highlighted in yellow. This is Opening Hill Road that runs, if you can see my cursor moving northeast, southwest. This is the Neck River, the blue line that you see that runs through Gould's Pond and the dam, and then continues southeasterly beyond the site. Where you see lots laid out in orange, they are within the town of Madison. On the opposite side of the river is, of course, the town of Guilford, as everyone knows, and because we're using Madison's geographic information system, there's no lot line shown in the Guilford portion. I'll kind of try to trace the bounds of it, but what I'm tracing is the Indigo Woods subdivision. And it was, as you probably all know, it used to be owned by the Tremaine estate. It was some 70 acres or so, as I recall, was cut off and subdivided quite some time ago. I actually worked on it, but it was a very long time ago. I don't remember the exact dates, but the subdivision was actually created as part of the Tremaine estate, and the subdivision created Kachina Way and Indigo Trail. And the remaining land is the two parcels that are the subject of the application, although as Attorney McCann just explained, he has now withdrew the small strip of land along Indigo Trail. So the parcel that we're discussing tonight is really what I've highlighted in yellow, which is the 6-acre parcel. I'm gonna stop sharing and then reshare very quickly because I'm not sure if I can change screens and whether you will see it. So I'll stop sharing just for a sec. And I will bring up the site plan and then reshare if I can. So this is the site plan that we prepared. The commission should have, so I believe. Indigo Trail on the left side running to the east and west, and Opening Hill Road on the bottom of the page across the front of the parcel. Gould's Pond is approximately, and the dam is approximately here, if you can see my cursor moving. And this is the bridge that carries Opening Hill Road over the Neck River. So the total parcel area is 6 acres. Very small portion, and I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit. A very small portion is actually located in Guilford. So this side of the Neck River is actually located in the town of Guilford. It's a little over 6,000 square feet, about 6,250 approximately square feet. But the remainder of the parcel, of course, is located in the town of Madison. There is an inland wetland. This line with the dark triangles on it is the inland wetland boundary. The boundary was delineated by a professional wetland scientist from New England Environmental Services some time ago. We located it. We prepared this topographic survey as the underlying base mapping for the site, and we located the inland wetland boundary as delineated by the wetland scientist. The site is partially wooded and partially a very nice open maintained lawn in the rear of the site. The site is located, and I think others will talk about this, but the site is located in a single family rural residence RU1 zoning district. The little portion in Guilford is also located in Guilford's single family residential zoning district. There are, as I'm sure as everyone knows, there is a loop driveway that currently serves the site from Opening Hill Road. There's also a narrow, maybe 8 feet or so wide gravel driveway that runs along this side of the house, parallel to Indigo Trail for a bit. Runs along the barn, I should say, and parallels Indigo Trail for a bit, and then bears to the right a little bit and provides access to the rear of the property. There's a chain link fence across this portion of the front of the property, and there's a gate in that fence at that driveway. The site is, in addition to being located in a single family rural residence zoning district, it's also located partially within a special flood hazard area zone. The flooding source, of course, is the Neck River. The boundary of that special flood hazard area zone is this dark dashed line, which I'll try to trace, and hopefully everyone can see my cursor moving. So it runs through the site along this boundary. A portion of both structures, the main house and the barn and guest house, are located within that special flood hazard area zone. Utilities are provided to the site. Power, electrical power, telephone, and cable television is provided to the site from the utility pole line on the site side of Opening Hill Road, and overhead wires and cables to the building. There's a utility pole actually located on the site also. Sewage disposal is on-site sewage disposal systems, subsurface sewage disposal systems on the site. And there is a water supply well on the site, which I will talk about in a minute, also, that provides potable water. There are very limited records in the town's files on the sewage disposal systems and the water supply well. We hired a contractor to investigate and find the location of the water supply well on the site, and it is within this portion of the building. This is an addition to the historic portion of the home, and the well is actually located beneath the floor within that addition portion to the building. And that, the best we can tell, At this point, that water, based on the contractor's investigation, that water supply well provides potable water to both the main house as well as to the barn and the guest house. We do not believe that there is a second potable water or drinking water well on the site. Based on our investigation, there could be, but again, there are no records, and based on our investigation, we could not find one. There is an old discontinued well that appears to have been used for an irrigation system, not for potable water, for drinking water. And that is proposed to be properly abandoned in accordance with the state's regulations for the abandonment of wells. So that's an overview of the existing site. This site questions at this point.
We're losing you. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I asked if there were any questions.
The public will have to wait until after the presentation. I think we'd probably like to wait until the presentation is complete and then ask questions from the commissioners and then ask of the audience, open it to the audience.
Okay. So this plan also outlines the proposed improvements. I described the existing site and its conditions, and now I'll describe the proposed improvements. And they are very simple. There is, regarding parking, there are today, there's room in front of the very nice stone masonry wall on the site. There is room for 4 parking spaces. There's no modifications that need to be made to have those 4 parking spaces at that location. There is also room here in this location for another 5 parking spaces. The only modification that we would like to propose is to resurface this planting bed area to give a little bit more room for vehicles to back out of these left-hand parking spaces. And there are also 3 existing parking spaces within the garage. There's a 3-bay garage within this building. And then I will zoom out again a little bit if I can. So in addition to that parking, we are proposing a temporary parking area that would only be used periodically here at the rear of the site. It is been sized to accommodate 12 vehicles. It would be accessed by an improved driveway. We would widen and regrade the existing driveway to a width of 12 feet. The driveway would be surfaced in gravel, so will the parking area. There will be a bituminous concrete apron, as there typically is at most gravel driveways out at the street within the right of way of Opening Hill Road. I'm sorry. Bear with me 1 second. I didn't mean to do that. The parking area is located, and I don't know if the commission can really see this, but it's purposely located in a low area so that it would not be visible from Indigo Trail. The topography, as you can see, all these dashed lines indicate a 1-foot change in elevation, and the slope is rising from the parking area. It's rising up to Indigo Trail some 10 feet or so. So this proposed parking area is set down in a low area and would not be visible from Indigo Trail. So those are the proposed improvements to the site. I should also mention that Dave Sullivan, our traffic engineer from SLR, will talk about this a little bit later, but in order to provide for adequate site distance from this improved driveway, we are calling for the removal of vegetation that is along Opening Hill Road in this section between the existing driveway, the existing loop driveway and the new improved driveway opening. So I will stop sharing again and switch one more time to the plan for the subsurface sewage disposal system. So this is the same base mapping, same plan of the existing conditions of the site, but this is a 3-sheet set of drawings that depicts a proposed subsurface sewage disposal system that's been designed to serve both the main building as well as the outbuilding, the guest building. It's been designed to meet the requirements of the technical standards of the Connecticut Public Health Code, and it has been submitted to the town's health department for their review. It will be in the lawn area below ground, of course. We purposefully sited it to be outside of the canopy of these 2 large maples, so that we don't interfere with their roots. So the entire subsurface sewage system, of course, would be below grade and will not be able to be seen, other than access points for the septic tank and pump chamber structures that will be required as part of the system. So I think that sums up my presentation. I will stop sharing and turn it back over to Attorney McCann to introduce the next speaker.
Mr. Rupp.
Yeah, our next speaker, as I indicated, was going to be Nina Beek. She's a certified planner with SLR International Corporation. I see her on the screen. She may be having some weather where she is, as I just learned, but hopefully she can get through her presentation and her report.
Thank you, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, we're having some weather blowing through, so I'll try to get through this as quickly and comprehensively as possible. My name is Nina Peak, as Chris said. I'm a certified planner with 30 years of municipal and private land development planning experience, and I'm currently the U.S. Manager of Planning at SLR International Consulting based out of Cheshire and New Haven, Connecticut. SLR was hired by the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation to evaluate the compliance of the proposal to renovate 6 Opening Hill Road for use as an educational and philanthropic center. We have submitted a memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which evaluates the compliance of the proposal with the 2013, 2024 to 34 POCDs, the zoning, and the Town of Madison's comprehensive plan. There's a significant amount of detail in that memorandum. I've put together a brief slide presentation for this evening summarizing the content of that. And if, Erin, if it's okay, may I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
And
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, as Chris mentioned, the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation is seeking a special exception permit to use the facility for educational and philanthropic purposes. We have reviewed the materials listed on this slide for consistency and provided a memo to the P&Z, which you have. I'm just going to run through quickly each of our findings, summarizing at the end with conclusions, and then some recommendations for the P&Z to consider when imposing additional conditions. So the first thing we did was we looked at zoning compliance and the use. So the proposed use, as you know, is not permitted as of right in the RU1 zoning district. So as a result, the applicant is seeking a special exception permit for a philanthropic, educational, recreational, religious use. As you all know, the code does not currently define that use, the philanthropic use, and so the code sends us to seek a definition commonly attributed to that use. We looked at several sources. We looked at, the OG Merriam-Webster for a non-for-profit. We looked at several zoning codes, the town of New Canaan, the town of Guilford. We sought consult from the complete book of illustrated book of development definitions, which is a very commonly cited source. And we also referred to the IRS's definition of a 501c3 charitable religious institution. Based on this analysis, we determined that it is consistent with the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation's mission to seek and fund innovative projects. The foundation is a 501c3 organization, a non-for-profit. The foundation proposes to use the site and all funds generated by any activities on the site for philanthropic and educational uses to support its mission. Even the revenue generating activities on the site would not generate a profit. And as a result, we concluded that the proposed project would be considered and reasonably defined as a philanthropic and educational use, and therefore, as it is listed specifically as a special exception use, it should be considered by the P&Z as special exception use in the RU1 zoning district. So now that we sort of evaluated that the use is considered and has been considered as a special exception use in the RU1, we went on to take a look at dimensional regulations. With the exception of the minimum front yard where there are existing structures, the proposed project, as Mike and Chris have mentioned, does not propose any new buildings on the site or any additional development, and as such is compliant with the dimensional regulations presented in section 5.5 of the town of Madison zoning regulations. As noted here, the main house and the guest house do encroach on the existing front yard, but no change is proposed, and therefore it should be considered a pre-existing non-conforming use. Next, we took a look at the signage. So the signage regulations is defined in 10.4 of the Madison zoning regulations, limit the sign, the proposed sign to 2 square feet. In all other areas, the sign complies. The proposed sign is 6 feet. We have made a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission that they require the applicant to reduce the sign of the size of the sign so that it complies with the 2 square foot regulation. Next, parking regulations. As Mike mentioned, there are 12 existing parking spaces. That is compliant with the regulations. There is one provision in the code which prohibits parking in the front yard. Again, that's a pre-existing non-conforming use. There are parking spaces located in the front yard. But as Mike mentioned, there is no proposed change to those parking spaces, and therefore it should be considered a pre-existing non-conforming use. So then we moved on to our review of the 2013 Plan of Conservation and Development. So there's a lot of material, a lot of words on these slides. There's a lot of additional analyses in the memo that was submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but I'll try to just do a quick summary of our review of that document. In the 2013 POCD, there is a consistency checklist in Chapter 8 that requires the P&Zs to take a look at any application or initiative that is presented to them and compare it to these criteria that are listed in the POCD. Here are a few of the consistency or evaluation criteria. The POCD asks that applications protect scenic resources, protect historic and archaeological resources, minimize character detractions, retain undeveloped land, encourage economic development, and conserve energy and water. There are other items in there which aren't particularly relevant to this, but again, encourage everyone to take a look at that checklist and compare it to the proposal. which does propose to restore the existing structures on the site as well as the scenic landscape. As Mike mentioned, it's a 6-acre property. The majority of the property will remain open and undeveloped. One of the key components of the 2013 POCD is the protection of historic and archaeological resources. The applicant has been in contact with the Connecticut Historic Preservation Office that determined the property would be eligible for listing for a number of reasons. And as a result, the applicant is submitting a National Historic Designation nomination, which would preserve and protect the property long-term. As many of you probably know, the site was in serious disrepair on or, as of 2019. Subsequently, it was foreclosed and the Bank of America took over, did some cleanup of the site, some functional improvements. This proposal would restore and adaptively reuse the site and restore the original historic landscape. Again, the majority of the property would remain undeveloped. Economic development, primary and secondary economic benefits to the town include employment at the facility, but also revenue generated from visitors to the site, hotels, restaurants, etc. The applicant does propose sustainability measures. We recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission require the applicant to develop those a little bit more and provide the Planning and Zoning Commission with a list of what those measures would be. Moving on to the current draft 2024-2034 POCD, which is currently in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Again, there are a number of goals, objectives, and policies. We've pulled out the two most relevant to this project, again, referencing historic and cultural landmark preservation. And notable here is integrating those sites into daily life. Not only is the foundation proposing to restore this, but also bring the property back into an active use, which is always the preference of the Historic Preservation Office, both state and national, not to just mothball facilities, but to bring them back into active reuse and generating interest to both the site and the area. And again, preservation of natural, public, and private resources. The applicant not only is preserving the majority of the site, but also is proposing sustainability measures in terms of their water, sewer, etc. Again, we recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission get a little bit more detail on those measures, those suggested measures. Finally, the applicant, the requirement of the special exception use permit requires an evaluation of the application against the comprehensive plan. As previously noted, the proposed use is allowed. It's listed as a special exception use in the RU1 zoning district. Per 5.1, the Planning and Zoning Commission must consider the project on an individual basis, weighing the impact of the use upon the surrounding area. As mentioned by Chris, and with the supplementary materials provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission, there's been a traffic analysis. There's this planning analysis. You'll hear from Mark Nadeau, who's done a property valuation assessment. And so providing these additional supplementary materials should hopefully help the Planning and Zoning Commission in their deliberations. And of course, the Planning and Zoning Commission may consider additional conditions. In conclusion, just summarizing what we've talked about and what's presented in our memo, the proposed project is a philanthropic and educational use. Their mission is consistent with the widely acceptable definition of that use and therefore is currently codified as a special exception use in this zoning district. The majority of the uses proposed on the site are consistent with and ancillary to of a philanthropic use and should therefore be allowed. The proposed use for experienced guests is permitted as of right in the town of Madison zoning regulations with a limit of 2 persons. Accordingly, our suggestion is the P&Z should limit that component of the project to no more than 2 persons at any time. The structures on the project site were constructed before the adoption of building standard. Therefore, there are several that can be considered pre-existing non-conforming structures, but there are no changes proposed to those structures. The project proposes a 6-foot square sign, which exceeds the maximum allowable. As a result, the P&Z should limit the proposed sign to 2-foot square. The existing on-site parking complies with the off-street parking regulations. There are no changes proposed with the exception of resurfacing the gravel driveway as mentioned by Mike. The material therefore is consistent with the zoning requirement for an adequate all-weather surface. The proposed project was evaluated for consistency with both the 2013 and the subsequent POCD and is substantially compliant with the regulations and the checklist. And finally, the proposed project is consistent with the Town of Madison Comprehensive Plan. Our recommendations, just to summarize, reduce the proposed on-site signage from 6-foot square to 2-foot square, require the kitchen facilities to be residential scale, consistent with a single-family home, limit experienced guests to a maximum of 2 persons at all times, require the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation staff to reside on site when there's anyone else living there, just to maintain consistency and oversight of the operations of the site and any conditions imposed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Dave Sullivan, who's going to speak right after me, will talk a little bit more about the parking management, but our recommendation is temporary or permanent no parking signs on Opening Hill Road and Indigo Way in advance of any activity on the site where off-site parking is proposed. The applicant should be required to identify that location and let the Madison Police and Fire Departments know, and potentially coordinate all events with Madison Police and Fire Departments already required. P&Z may want to consider having police on site when the applicant is hosting larger events. And finally, provide additional detail regarding energy conservation and sustainability measures so the P&Z can have some comfort that those additional measures will meet the environmental considerations that are prioritized in many of the town's existing policy documents. So with that, I will stop my screen share. I know that was a lot of information to take in, and look forward to hearing everyone's questions following the presentation by Dave.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note for the record that the recommendations of Nina in the compliance report all are agreeable to the applicant, and the applicant would welcome them as conditions to any approval to the application. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dave Sullivan.
Thank you and good evening. Again, my name is David Sullivan. I manage the Traffic Transportation Mobility Group, SLR. I hang my hat in our New Haven office. I've been doing this for longer than I care to admit, but I'll leave it at over 30 years. I'm a professional engineer and have been doing transportation planning and traffic engineering for all of that time. Normally I would give a brief summary of the type of things we looked at and what the findings were, but I think I'll go into a little bit more of the report, a little bit more of the detail, so you can get a feel for what our analysis entailed and what kind of findings we had. And when we found things that we thought required mitigation, we have made those recommendations. So with no further ado, the scope of our study had several tasks. We did field reconnaissance. We did data collection, where we collected traffic volume data from that CONDOT had, Connecticut Department of Transportation. We looked at crash data, 5 years, which is the typical window that we look at. That information is from the Connecticut crash data repository. We did significant check of the access and the sightlines. We made a detailed review of the programming and estimated the traffic. Did supplemental counts to update what Conda had already done. And we conducted an impact analysis. And at the end of the report, we have several recommendations that we had made. So I'll start with the existing roadway conditions. And for tonight, I'll call Opening Hill Road and North-South Road. It's slightly northeast to southwest. But for ease, I'll call it North-South Road. The speed limit on Opening Hill Road is 25 miles an hour. The area is primarily residential. The road is classified as a major collector by PennDOT. A major collector means that it takes traffic from local roads or to some specific destination, such as the school to the north. So that's what its classification is. Generally, a collector road would have a roadway width somewhere between 20 and 24 feet. The amount of traffic that a collector road generally handles is between 500 and 2,500, although some major collector roads do carry as much as 6,000 vehicles a day. The Opening Hill Road specifically, for the most part, is between 20 and 22 feet wide. The narrowest section where we had some sub 20-foot dimensions that we identified were in Guilford. There were 3 in particular. We called the town engineer of Guilford, and I walked the road with her, and we looked at those 3 locations. 2 of them were where there's very large trees, and one of them was a rock outcropping. None of them were on curves. She was not particularly concerned with them. The accident or crash data would back that up. And what she agreed to do is talk to the tree warden and see what the health of the trees were. They looked not 100% healthy, but if the tree warden thought that they were due to come down, she would let us know, and the applicant has agreed to do that if that is determined to be warranted. So, and again, the road itself, and editorialize a little bit, is not unusual, particularly for Madison roads or many New England roads, in its character, in its width, in its geometry, and in its function. And that's what we found in particular. Some of the specific traffic characteristics of the road, I mentioned that we collected information from Conda, and what they found was that the annualized daily traffic, what they do is take a number and say, on average, this is how much traffic is on this road. Their estimate was 950 vehicles. Again, the typical range is between 500 and 2,500. To give you an idea of a higher level, Clapper Hill Road in Guilford has an ADT of 2,800. So it gives you some idea that we're well below half of what that is considered. And that road has a similar function as this one. To supplement that information, we did our own counts. We did a full week of traffic counts for a number of reasons. One, to update, validate the conduct information, We did it for 7 days, so we would get a feel for variations, not only in traffic, but in speeds, for example. We looked at what these machines do for us, not only give us traffic volumes, they give us the type of vehicles that are going past it. And we found that 9% of the traffic is trucks or buses, which, to give you some perspective, that's I won't say a substantial number, but it's a notable number. So there is those types of vehicles on this road today. It also allows us to get travel speeds. Almost always the speed of traffic is higher than the posted speed limit. Doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. What we use when we're determining certain characteristics is what we call the 85th percentile speed. That's the speed at which 85% of the traffic is traveling at or below. So the 15% of Yahoos we're not designing for, we're designing for the 85th percentile. In this particular case, the speed for 85th percentile speed for northbound vehicles was 39.4 miles per hour. And again, we got an 85th percentile speed for each of the days. So this was the highest speed on the of the 7 days individually. Southbound was 37.3 miles per hour for 85th percentile. I'll talk more about those as I go along. Actually, I'll talk more about them now. Intersection site distances. So this is the, we need to understand if people can exit this site safely. And to do that, we measure what the intersection site distances are. So based on those speeds, those 85th percentile speeds, CONDOT provides us in ultimately AASHTO, which is a federal document, which CONDOT is based on, takes the speed and turns that into the amount of feet that somebody should be able to see somebody approaching from. So if you're sitting in your car and somebody is traveling 39.4 miles per hour, you should be able to see that car 435 feet away to be able to safely identify it, make your decision, get into the traffic stream without the vehicle having to make any maneuvers such as a slow down or stop. In the southbound direction for 37.3, you would need 415 feet. So slightly slower, you need slightly less distance. So we looked at initially at the two driveways. As you know, Mike pointed out, it's a semicircle. There's two driveways at either end of the parking. We first looked at the northern driveway, and what we found was that you could get the site distance looking to your left or coming out of Guilford. You can get the required distance there. There might be some minor shrub clearing or things of that nature, but nothing dramatic. Looking to the north, however, there's a stand of fairly mature shrubs. Our recommendation is that those shrubs need to be removed or, as very minimum, relocated out of the sightline. With those things done, the sight lines for exiting vehicles at the northern driveway meet the standards and requirements. At the southern driveway, the sightline restriction is not so easy because it's essentially the curvature of the road. So in that particular case, our first recommendation on the act, or our second recommendation beside the clearing, is that this driveway function as an inbound from the southern driveway and outbound on the northern driveway. And we checked what we call stopping sight distance to make sure that somebody that was slowing down to enter into the driveway, that vehicles behind them could see them make the maneuver, and we wouldn't be causing rear end accidents. It's called stopping sight distance, and we meet that criteria. The gravel driveway, which is slightly north of the two established driveways, as Mike pointed out, that will be improved. And by improved, it'll be a standard width. However, most importantly, I asked Mike to ensure that if there was a car waiting to exit the gravel driveway, that there was enough room and enough width at the throat of that driveway so that entering vehicles would not be affected. So that vehicles could enter, even though the traffic here is not going to be a consistent thing. We want to make sure that we're accounting for the possibility that someone exits while someone's trying to enter. So if we only left the let's say 15-foot width through the entire length, then if somebody was going to exit, that entering car would have to wait and would be waiting out on Opening Hill Road to make the entering maneuver. So we've the design is accounted for that. Talk more about the use of that in a moment. But we also check the sight lines from the gravel driveway, and looking right is no problem. Looking left will be no problem once the recommendation that I put forth for the northern driveway looking right is implemented. That will be the same mitigation required to improve the sight line looking left from the gravel driveway. Roadway crash data. Okay, so when we initially did our study, there were 4 crashes that were identified in the 5-year period. All of the crashes were, we looked, we looked from Nortontown Road to Blingett Road. All of the accidents we identified were north of the site. There were 4 of them. 3 of the 4 were property damage only, suspected injury in one of the crashes. They were all single vehicle and had some contributing circumstances. We crashed 1. There was, it was deemed excessive speeds. Crash 2, there were rainy weather conditions and excessive speeds. Crash 3, the driver was experiencing fatigue or fell asleep. That particular person refused an alcohol test. That was noted in the report. And crash 4 was with icy, snowy road conditions. So those were the 4 that were identified at the time. Since then, as we all know, there's been a 5th accident, which has recently happened, and which caused us to look harder at the bridge which exists out there. When our first look at it, the width of it is about 21 feet for the travelway. There hadn't been any history of crashes there, so our focus did not immediately go there. Not sure of all the details of the crash, whether I know there was, in reading the report, apparently there was a tire issue and hit the abutment, and so I'm not quite sure exactly what happened, but nonetheless, we think there are some things that can be done out there. So, for example, there is guide rail when you're coming from Madison towards Guilford. Unfortunately, that guide rail is not used as a protecting feature for the abutment. If you notice, the end of it near the abutment is outbound from the actual abutment. So it's there to protect people from going over the edge as you approach it into the ravine in the Neck River. So one of our recommendations is to replace that guide rail and have it properly mounted so that it is actually giving direction and protection from the blunt end of the abutment. In the other direction, no guide rail. So we're recommending the same thing be done in the northbound direction coming from Guilford. So a guide rail would be provided there. In addition to the guide rail, we think there should be some signage that could be added. Very little signage out there in this regard. And additionally, some reflectors. There are some reflectors that can go right on top of the abutment. Some could be on the blunt ends. Some of those things can be done. And we've discussed this with the applicant. They're willing to make these improvements to improve the safety of that crossing. So let's get on to the operations, the traffic operations. I'm sure you've heard in the past, there's really three types of events. There's the meetings, there's the gatherings, and there's the events. So what's actually happening here from a traffic standpoint and how we made our analysis? Well, the first thing is that there's 4 staff members that typically will be there, maybe once per week, maybe twice per week. We said, well, let's assume 4 staff members, 2 are there every day, and they arrive during the morning peak hour, and they leave during the afternoon peak hour, and they have their own individual cars. There's also the 6 bedrooms, which would allow for 8 people to be staying on site, living, working on site, various capacities. So what we assumed for that is that half of those people would again be arriving, that they're all taking their own cars, and they're arriving or leaving during peak hour. Realistically, the way I understand this, these folks may be coming and staying there for a certain period of time. They're not punching a time clock where they're likely to be making these traffic movements during peak hours, but nonetheless, we assume that they work. And then we have the meetings, gatherings, and events. So we have the base situation of traffic, and then we have the meetings, gathering, and events. So let's talk about the parking for these first of all. The biggest parking concern, or I guess I would call it concern, but the biggest parking issue that we identified is for the meetings, believe it or not, because that will generate individual vehicles, and these meetings could be held for up to 12 people. So now you have some of the parking that may be being used by the residents or by the staff, and then you have the potential on these meetings, which we would suggest be parked on site. So I think these meetings have to be carefully orchestrated and managed. So if it's one of the larger meetings and you expect that there's going to be 7 people arriving for it, and you have 5 parking spaces that are not being used at the moment, that's when the gravel lot would come into play. So you would instruct some of those folks prior to the meeting ever happening to be moved to the gravel area so that the convenient parking for those day people is available. So that's the plan for the meetings. And we have up to 12 because, being a conservative traffic engineer by nature, I said, what if there were 12 spaces filled up with 8 residents and and 4 employees, which makes 12. And we had 12 people driving individual. I said, give me 12 spaces in this gravel lot so that if we had to take everybody out of the front, we could. Unrealistic, but the belt and suspenders are put in place for that eventuality. The other thing that gravel lot could be used for is for not only the meetings, but because the meetings may have maybe a lot of sandwiches or something like that. But the service of those things, maybe kitchen staff, we assume 2 may come. But they would have the ability to do the loading and unloading. And in the bigger events, perhaps there's an area where there's more service needed, but that gravel area could be used for service vehicles too, so that they don't need to use the front parking area. So that's the parking. The meetings we talked about. And when you add up all these things for the meeting, we have the staff, the potential catering and kitchen staff, which would be meeting specific, the attendees all driving themselves, and the residences, as I said, half of them leaving or departing. In the morning peak hour, there would be a total of 22 trips in and out under this meeting scenario, as well as in the afternoon, 22 trips. The difference is most of the trips would be inbound in the morning and most of the trips outbound in the afternoon. So that's the magnitude of traffic with all these conservative assumptions we put in place. When we get to the gatherings, we have operationally they would be same, except the limit is now 25 people. So right off the bat, it goes from a meeting to a gathering because it's over 12. So everything we put in place for 12, we now have to rethink. So the gatherings will be serviced with a shuttle. So attendees will be instructed for a meeting place and a gathering place, no pun intended, and they will be shuttled in. The parking impact is less because nobody's parked there. The shuttle will come and go. It won't stage there. And when you add all that up, instead of 22 trips, you're replacing the attendees for the meetings with the shuttle trips. You would have 16 trips. And it would be a little bit more balanced because the shuttle would go in and out. So you would still have more inbound than outbound, but it would be a little bit more balanced. So that number is 16. The events, which are the bigger things that can have up to 150 attendees, clearly that is going to be a shuttle operation again. You need more shuttles. The shuttles that we discussed would have a minimum of capacity of 20 or 25 people. And by using that, we estimated that the 150 attendees, if there were a maximum of 150, at 15 people per shuttle, would be 10 shuttles. 10 shuttles to get them in, 10 shuttles to get them out. And that would result in 33 trips in the morning and afternoon. Again, more entering than exiting, but again, more balanced than in the meeting. And again, that happens twice a year. So we get potential for 10 more trips. And I've already indicated that the road has the history of accepting vehicles of that size over the years. So the next step was to say, well, what is the traffic impact? Now, the way we determine traffic impact is to create a scenario at some date in the future, this year, this time. For this study, we picked next year, 2025. And we said, what will the traffic be without any of the activity coming to fruition? And what would it be if it does come to fruition? And which means those estimates I added to the driveways for that scenario to see what the operating conditions would be. The results of impact analyses are in terms of letter grades, A through F, like school grades. Level service A, for example, means that you pull up to the end of the driveway, the stop sign, the stop condition, and you are on the road and on your way in less than 10 seconds. As your delay increases to 20, 30, 40, 50 seconds, the levels of service get worse and worse and worse. And ultimately, service F, cheat sheet here, level of service F, which is the worst, is if you're waiting over 50 seconds. So we did this analysis, and we looked at driveways under the three scenarios: the meetings, for the gatherings, and for the events. And during those peak hours, the morning peak hour, afternoon peak hour, and even if these were to take place on Saturday, since we had the Saturday data, we looked at it, and in every case, the level of service would be level of service A. So you can't get better than A, so consequently, the traffic impact is undefinable in that particular round. So we've done a detailed evaluation of safety. We've done a detailed evaluation of the operations, and we came up with a series of recommendations, which I'll go through now, some which I mentioned, and some which I may not. One, due to the sightline restrictions, the north driveway should be exit only, and the south driveway should be enter only. Any brush or branches within the right of way should be trimmed and maintained as such to prevent obstruction of the sightlines. Two, programming should be scheduled such that meeting, gathering, and events do not overlap each other. Additionally, meetings that occur on the same day should be scheduled at least an hour apart to prevent overlap in traffic entering and exiting the site and overlap in on-site parking. So we want to have that window between the events, so we're back to status quo before the next one starts. Three, parking for gathering and events should be staged off-sites and participants should be shown. Parking for larger meetings may require that residents or staff be located in the auxiliary gravel lot to free up space in the main paved parking area. Opening Hill Road has areas where the width, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opening Hill Road has areas where the width of the road is less than the guidelines for a collector road. These segments, all in Guilford, have not been problematic over the years in terms of crashes. However, we have met with the Guilford Town Engineer to review these areas. There are 2 areas that restrict the width that are not considered problematic. However, the Guilford tree warden will be contacted by the town engineer, and if deemed appropriate, these trees will be removed. The applicant is willing to pay for the tree removal as requested. A recent crash at the bridge over the Neck River brought to light the opportunity to improve the safety of that bridge. While the width is consistent with much of the road, the abutments pose a lateral obstruction that could be better protected. In particular, guide rail, advanced warning signage, and reflectors are proposed. And once again, the applicant has agreed to implement these recommendations. Pass the mic back to Chris, and we have to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Next, I'm going to introduce Mark Nadu, who has done a property value impact analysis, a copy of which is on file. Here's Mark. He's here. I'm going to Mark. And I'm going to use nice copy of this document.
Start in the middle and you can pass it to.
We're good.
We're good. Right back.
Anyone needs to stand up and stretch. Recess? Let's get some water. Oh, Mark, present.
Guess I'm gonna wait. It's working? Pretty good. Any better? Yeah. I should know there's some in the band. You have to hold the microphone close to you. We're gonna wait for, I guess, Mr. Rubin to come back.
Or we may want to get.
I'm sorry?
We may want to keep going.
Okay, we'll be back, right? Hopefully we'll be back, right? Yeah. My name is Mark Nato. I am a licensed and certified real estate appraiser. Also, I've been in the development business and I do building consulting. I've been doing all of these things for 40 years, mostly in Connecticut, some in the state of Maine, some in other states in New England. I live, and my office is in Guilford, Connecticut. I've been working on the shoreline for the better part of 40 years. So I'm pretty familiar with the landscape. In fact, I'm familiar with this house because I knew, well, ever so slightly the prior occupant who I guess for a while she took great care of it and it kind of fell into tremendous disrepair. Anyway, I was contacted for the purpose of doing a study to determine whether there would be a diminution in value relative or in response to the proposed improvements, changes, and restoration and renovation at this property. That property being the property at 6 Open Hill Road in Madison. Part of my scope of work was to inspect the property. I measured the structures, I photographed the structures. The second half of what I've done is to, certainly in addition to reviewing the proposal by the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, which includes the scope of the type of activities they plan on having there, somewhat the scope of work that they intend to do to the structures that are on the site to make them more functional. I can tell you right now, none of the structures are habitable. They're in pretty poor condition. There's a lot of rot. There are roof leaks that apparently have been perpetuating for some time. When I examined the structures, many of the ceilings inside what I would call the antique dwelling, which dates to the 18th century, a lot of the ceilings are removed in that structure. My guess it's the product of leaks that have probably occurred over a period of time. In response to the proposed renovations, changes, and organization that will tend to occupy the main structure and the other structures on the property, I looked at what would be considered the most similar kind of uses. Now, the foundation's use is largely that of educational. So I fanned out and I looked at 3 educational facilities, one of which is on Open Hill Road. The second of which is the Grove School location, and and the third of which is Madison High School. The study that I did is very simplistic in that, and I'm going to show you. In that, so all the commission members have this. So on page 7, this is the country school. And basically on this map, there's a red dot in the middle. There is a 1 mile radius from that dot. And what it shows, this is a culmination of all the home sales within a 2-year period. And with no discrimination as to size, price, or anything, it's all the home sales. This was done for each of the 3 locations. And the idea about choosing this as a benchmark is that it helps isolate the kind of use, but in all instances, all of these uses are more intense than what the foundation is proposing to use at 6 Opening Hill Road. Now, so for example, and I'm going to keep this as concise as I can, the country school, which is located, I guess, about 1.5 miles north of the subject property. It's situated in about 40 acres. They have, by count, 215 day students. So in addition to classrooms, faculty, facilities, that kind of thing, they have athletic facilities, a baseball field, a running track, so on and so forth. And that is pretty much consistent with all of the educational facilities that I looked at in Madison. The one real exception would be that of the high school. It's just so much larger and accommodates so many more students. And I guess contiguous to the high school site is another school that was there before. That was the original high school. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
High school was built 10, 11 years ago, maybe? Or 12 years ago? Okay. I just remember it cost quite a bit. And then we built Guilford. And everyone was surprised. No, not at all. So addressing the country school, the 2 samplings I took were within 1 mile of the school, within 0.5 mile of the school. The median selling price of homes within 1 mile was $590,000. The median selling price within 0.5 mile, rounded, was $573,000. So not a material difference. The same thing was done for the Grove School. The Grove School sits on Tops Road, just south of Interstate 95. That site is nearly 90 acres, and it actually straddles Tops Road. There are school improvements on both sides of the road. And that student count reported to me was 146 total students. And 116 are residential students and 30 are day students. So there are students that actually live on site at the Grove School. This facility as well has athletics facilities, a baseball field, tennis courts, a basketball court, field house, so on and so forth. They have 21 buildings with an aggregate area of approximately 72,000 square feet. They have 20,000 square feet of paid parking. The median sales price within 0.65 miles of this property was $520,500. The median sales price within 1/2 mile radius was $520,500, interestingly. There's no material difference there. The high school is very different. The high school also situated on a very large site. According to the town's data, has 1,160 high school students, multiple athletic facilities, a baseball field, a running track, multiple tennis courts, a basketball court, football facility, baseball field, and approximately 100,000 square feet of paid parking, all of which is lit with large stanchions that provide lighting to the parking area, the walking areas, and some of the athletic fields as well. The building's a total have an aggregate area of 400,000 square feet. The median selling price of a home within a half a mile of Daniel Hand High School was $455,000. The median selling price of a home within 0.75 miles was approximately $509,000. So there you have a material difference, and I think logically, because the uses at the high school, the improvements are much greater, they're much more intense. Of the things that I would do as an appraiser to look at, to decide whether there's cause or some kind of contributory factor that would cause a diminution in value of the surrounding properties. First is noise. And based upon this proposed use, I don't see anything that's material in terms of noise, because all the activities are largely inside. I said are largely inside.
Let him talk, please.
Air pollution. There is no noted impact by way of air pollution. Light pollution. There's no plan for raised stanchions or lighting of the parking area other than ground lighting. So there's no material difference in the amount of lumens that will be cast on the site. Incongruous structures, probably of the biggest concern. Now, it's my understanding that the main house, which is an 18th century house, will be restored and repaired. And that structure is probably one of the most congruous structures on the shoreline, where we have a large population of antique homes. The same is true of the accessory structure that's on the site that is basically built in the vernacular style. It's nothing out of the ordinary, and it's typical of what you would see in the landscape along the shoreline of Connecticut. Finally, with respect to traffic, on a general daily basis, based upon the numbers I looked at, there's not a material difference. The exception would be when they have a large event. Exception would be a large event. And in reading the documentation, it says that those large events would be limited to 3 a year. I don't know when they would be, it just said 3 a year. What I can tell you that in summary is that the comparison to the 3 schools, all of which are educational, all of which have outdoor facilities, all of which have a greater percentage of lighting, generating a greater amount of lumens. 2 of the 3 schools did not have a material difference as it related to the immediate improvements relative to those schools. And then when you went out to say like a mile, there was not a material difference. The only material difference was in the data in and around the high school and beyond a 3/4 mile radius. So my finding is that there shouldn't be any diminution in value. And in fact, my experience, and I underline my experience by saying that for over 40 years, I've worked on, restored, I've worked with the National Trust, the Connecticut Preservation Trust, the New Haven Preservation Trust, and Newport. And generally, the restoration and the preservation of a structure like this could be more of an augmentive thing than a diminishing thing. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Oh, wait. There is one other, I apologize. There is one other thing. There's one other thing. I gave the commission this document here. What this is, it shows all of the homes on Opening Hill Road. This is the town's assessment, interpretation of value. The first is within 0.75 miles of Opening Hill Road. And you can see, here's the array of values and the size of those respective sites that the town has assigned. Then we get to, we're within 1/4 mile of the country school. And interestingly, the town's interpretation, the valuation company's interpretation of the value of those lots are basically the same. Chris? That.
So that concludes our presentation in chief, if you will. We do have some rebuttal and because of the way we kind of went out of order last meeting. But I would reserve all of our rebuttal and our summation to whenever that occurs, probably at another meeting. So at this point, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, and we can move to the next phase. There's no way to hear from the public because we want to hear from the public as well. And reiterate what we said at the first meeting, continue to say that to the extent that the public or this commission has conditions or limitations which will make our proposal better, we are listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next phase would be questions from commissioners for the applicants. Based on what we've heard tonight, anyone has questions, including Mike Bugda, great, and including our Zoom commissioners. Mike, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I have a question for the main attorney.
If you'll excuse me.
Oh, we should use the microphone.
Yes, Mike, do we have any background or history?
You need to hold it, it is on, you need to hold it right up to your lips.
Do we have any background or history on that sliver of land with the purpose and reason of how it existed in the first place?
I don't. I have some guesses about why that land was maintained by the Tremaines. It is, as you can see, it's a strip adjacent to Indigo Trail. It could never be built on, given the size of the structure, but it could be that the owners wanted to maintain that parcel of land to build homes along Indigo Trail and incorporate lots into that subdivision. But that's just speculation on my part. I don't know the history of that strip of land.
Okay.
I also don't believe it was ever intended to be subject to restrictions that it can only be used for a single family residence because you can't put a single family residence on that lot. But that's as much as I know.
Okay. Another question I had was, I visited the locale on one occasion. There's a little stone kind of a turnabout in the front where there's a high wall. That wall will stay, correct? And then to the left of that, there's a high hedgerow. Will most of that stay in place?
Yes.
So none of that will be taken down?
No.
Okay. As for lighting plan, are there any changes to the lighting that's currently in place that are planned to be added?
No.
None. Okay. So there's no new quantity of 600 lumen lights expected to be added to the property?
No, and I can say confidently that the applicant has no interest in creating light emanating from this site to anywhere else. The lighting originally installed was part of the historical and architectural significance of the landscape. And so I would say it's a preservation of the lighting and not any increase or augmentation of lighting.
Okay. I had two questions also for Mr. Nadeau. On your additional sheet for the assessments, some of them seem to be emboldened in a different color. Is that intentional or is that?
It is, because those are the ones in the top section. Those are the ones that are most similar in site size relative to the average site size in the lower part, which is closer to the.
I understand. I don't recall you mentioning that, but okay.
I didn't mention that, no.
Okay. And then the other question on page 4 of your assessment, I don't understand the last sentence of increased traffic. It says events shall be limited to not more than.
Can you speak into the mic? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It says here that events shall be limited to not more than one event per month and not more than 3 events per month.
Per year. Per year.
Oh, per year. Thank you. I see it now. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm done.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Troy, can you explain again, the experienced guests are the guests who would be not the program guests, the paying guests?
They could potentially be paying, yes. They would be people who would want to spend a long weekend immersed in the art and architectural history of the site. I have likened that to the farm stay on other occasions, which is farms can be allowed to have people immerse themselves for a weekend in the farm experience. So yes, and the recommendation from the certified planner was that we limit that to no more than 2 at a time, which we've agreed to implement that.
It would not include the program guests.
Right, so the program guests would be more of artists or architects or designers in residence. The other type of residency would be staff.
Question. Yeah.
Jeff, thanks.
So in total, how many residents do you expect to have? I mean, I've heard, up to 8, I think, is what you said. Is that the total? And then is that broken down by when you have the people that experience come?
I don't know that's officially broken down, but I think over the course of what we presented, we're saying that we would limit the residences to 2 experienced guests at a time.
Okay.
I strongly doubt that there will be 2 experienced guests in this site 365 days a year. It's just not going to happen. As far as staff residing there, that is probably the most likely candidate to have residents living full-time 365. And then as far as program guests, I would think that those are the ones I believe are typically 4 months, such as artist and residency, and they are selected through a criteria for whether they're eligible to effectively be gifted or granted the opportunity to live, work, and study, continue their profession in this location. So I can't give you an exact number. I know that we can not exceed 8 at a time. I know that we won't have more than 2 experienced guests at a time. And we won't have more than 2 staff people at a time.
And that would be the 365, potentially, the 2 staff.
That's the only one I think that could get to that level.
Okay.
And we said we will always have staff in residency when there are other people in residency, so that there's that level of staff contact present.
Right.
All right, I have a question. I think we're just going to go right down the line. If that's okay. Is there any way you could control or prevent people from going north on Opening Hill? I don't know. I think that's a programming question. I'm not sure if it's not so much a logistical question, but in terms of the use of the property.
There's two things you could do. One is you could prohibit it with signage and hope for the best. What is more practical is that you instruct the folks when they're coming. For instance, you'll be giving guests directions. And when we did a look at, coming from 95, for example, coming from hotel, for example, the train, we looked at those, and they're going to come through Hilton. That's the most direct way. they could be directed that way more specifically as part of the program. There's going to be a high degree of management that's going to be required here. All of their events are going to have to go through the fire department, the police department. So that could just be another checkbox that they get instructed that way. Now, if you're an employee and you live north on Opening Hill Road, it's kind of hard to make them have to circle all the way around to go to work, for example. But certainly for the vast majority of the traffic, I think we can find a way to do that.
Thank you.
And the staff could use the ancillary parking though, so it's a different entry into the property.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Bob Reinhardt. I'm gonna reserve some of my questions for the end when we have a chance to look at everything that was submitted, so. I just have a couple of questions to help me clarify a few thoughts. You may not be able to answer them all now, but I'll give you a head start on it. So the first one is, as I'm going through all the different submissions, trying to get my arms around the nature of each of the events, so the meetings, the gatherings, the events. It's very superficial as far as the description goes. I can't figure out what it actually is going to be. It's 150 people with a live band. Don't answer. I'm just saying, I don't know. So I can't figure out the impact on the neighborhood until I actually understand what the intent is, because there's a lot. So, I don't know what I'm going to do it too. Okay, I'll try. Oh, I can hear myself this better. Okay, so the idea is to help me understand what the intent of each event is. That's the first one. The on-site residencies, sounds like there's going to be 8 people. That would be inclusive of staff. Okay. When I start looking at the residencies, the gatherings, the people working, losing the math isn't working for me as far as the parking goes, unless you do have those 12 ancillary spots in the back, which is a definite request. But I'm not sure if Mike is still on the line. The statement now is that there are 3 spots in the garage, 5 spots, and a pullout on the driveway, and another 7 spots? 12 to the right of the driveway. I think there's a total of 24. But my question is, the garage, I get that exists. Are the other spots delineated as parking spots, or is it just an area that would fit 5 cars? Is this historically 5 parking spots that have always been used as parking spots? Thank you. Thank you.
For the applicant.
The applicant, you all can talk later. So I just want to understand the historical nature of the parking spots, because that now is in the front yard and it's being, in the SLR report, saying it's pre-existing conditions. I need to understand, is it really pre-existing?
The 4 spots in front of the house, which are actually in front of the house and in the front yard, are parking areas now. People park in those
Okay.
spots. We're not changing anything.
Okay.
And the area adjacent to the garage is not the front yard. It's not the front yard of the site.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm trying to understand. I haven't seen a map. We just got it, so I was trying to look at what my cat on. The other one from understanding, so I reviewed the SLR report that was submitted, but it sounds like the presentation was based on a second version of the SLR report, which was just submitted. There are currently 2 now. Is that the case, or just have the 1?
It's the same report. The one I submitted last night just lacked the name and signature on it. It's the identical report.
Okay, good, thank you. I have to reread it. Okay, that's all I got for now. I have more later, thank you.
I'm gonna try this without this, because I hate it. A couple of things.
This is Andy Rubin.
Thank you, Andy. The parking spaces, the stone area that you're gonna create with 12, is that, I'm having trouble visualizing that off the road. Is that in that parcel, that thin parcel of land that's not to be used, or you're not gonna use, you're withdrawing? It's separate to that, it's to the east of that, or west rather?
It is.
Okay, all right.
And there is a curb cut and a gate there now. So if you drive by, you'll see it.
I've seen it there, I just wasn't sure if that was what it is. Okay, thank you. You had mentioned, going back to the events, I just want to be clear, I heard on the larger events, the 150 with the 15 going back and forth with the shuttle, that thing, I heard 2 and I heard 3 events a year. Is it?
I think Dave Sullivan might have said too, our statement of use as amended indicates up to 3 and no more than 1 per month. That's the statement of use that's before the commission.
And part and parcel to that, you talked about people coming in and out in the morning and then, kind of in the afternoon, typical 9 to 5, let's call it. My understanding from, I think back in the March meeting was that these larger events were going to take place at night. And that was one of the concerns. Is that no longer the case, or is that just not?
I'm not sure that they're going to take place in the evening. When I think of them, I think of them more as evening events, but I presume they could be during the day. The way the statement of use indicates is that they have to be within the specified hours. Can't go later than 9 on certain days and 10 on certain days. But I suppose there could be an event during the day on a Saturday or weekend. I don't know that we've limited it, but we consider that, if it made sense to people to talk about timing limitations.
No, I just want to understand, because I heard both over
But
the
Dave
course
might
of the last
have
few months.
had a point on that
Yeah,
as well.
in the traffic study, we took the worst case scenario and assumed that the events started during the morning peak hour and ended during the afternoon peak hour. So that when we're evaluating the impact and the level of service, we have the traffic at the same time the traffic on Oakland Road is heaviest. So we had no inclination of when it was, but that's just when we.
Echoing Rob's point, I think it would be important to show when you put it in a table, something, the delineation of the events, what the operational definition of those events are, and what the anticipated number of people are at those events, and the associated timing of those events. So we could look at it comprehensively and be able to say what's going on at what periods of time during the day as it affects traffic flow, school buses, et cetera, et cetera. And that is, to me at least, that's unclear. Maybe there's some others, so that could be helpful. With that in mind, again, sorry for all the questions, but the traffic study that was completed, when was that completed? Specifically?
I received the final report yesterday.
No, but when was the time for? You said you measured it for a week, David, correct?
Yeah.
When was that done? Was it done during the school year?
Yes,
Okay, so it does take into account the buses that are going through there.
it was May 17th to May 20th.
Okay, that should be good. Yep, okay, thank you. And then, fine. I heard mentioned a few times, sustainability measures, and other improvements. What specifically, what are you thinking of for energy conservation, sustainability, and what are we talking about here?
I'll let Michelle answer that, but it is one of the conditions that Nina suggested that we provide you with more detail on that. And sustainability is one of the 3 prongs of the mission statement of the foundation. So I can let Michelle talk about that further if you care to.
Happy to, so we want to consider everything with relation to the water center area. We want to make sure we are being respectful for all of the water management on the site. So what is green infrastructure or stormwater management measures that we could take to make sure we are protecting all of the flows on the site. And clean energy would be another particular measure that we would look at. So we may look at others and we are happy to talk more about that, but to give you a sense. Certainly the water management, certainly clean it.
You're talking about PV on the roofs of the buildings.
We don't know specifically. I mean, I think we have to look at the historical renovation and whether there are good sites for that. But I think we would look at the most energy efficient types of equipment, mechanical, electrical, but we will look at renewable energy options.
Thank you.
John, here's a quick question for Attorney McKeon. So Nina mentioned that the existing buildings fall under the category of pre-existing non-conforming use, and improvements to a certain degree are allowed. But it sounds like the improvements to special house are going to be fairly significant. So my question is, where's the legal line where those improvements are not allowed? And why doesn't the applicant's proposal cross that line?
I believe that the improvements to the house may very well be significant, but they are interior.
Okay.
And the functionality of the buildings themselves, in terms of additional structures, I don't believe there is any. It's the interior functionality of the space and the preservation and restoration of structures that are all significantly compromised right now. So I think you're getting at, are we expanding a non-conforming structure? And I don't see that as happening at all. In fact, some of the structure ancillary to the historic barn may in fact go away. So it might be reducing structure on site or repurposing it, changing its configuration to be more functional. So I don't see any expansion of the structures.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
I have one question on the appraisal.
Sure.
So the assumption was that the foundation is the equivalent of a educational organization. And I think within the site and the proposal, it's more of corporate headquarters event site. There's very little traditional education occurring. So I'm not sure how, I'm struggling with the comparison of the property values around small schools compared to a site like this, which is not a small school. So while the report was done well, it's not working for me.
So, the best comparison that I can have, that you can have, is for me to isolate sites that are in Madison. First, one of which is on the subject street. Doesn't get any better than that. So, associated with those that happen to be educational, part of the mission of this foundation is educational. The kind of, explain it, the byproduct of having a school there. You have different things. You have facilities, you have classrooms, you have athletic facilities, you have a gym, a baseball field, a football field, so on and so forth. That translates into usage, traffic, light, so on and so forth. So this is the best that I think probably anyone can do in terms of trying to mirror what will be happening down the road at number 6 Opening Hill Road. The idea was to try to mimic that as best I could. And I think, as opposed to me going to Teaneck, New Jersey and saying, hey, someone put a foundation over in Teaneck and it's in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And you would say, what does Teaneck have to do with Madison?
I understand.
But you can see from the data, which is unaltered, it's just pure data, that in and around the schools, meaning the country school and the grove school, there's no material difference in value.
I can also add from.
Bob, can I follow up on your question, Bob?
Well,
It's directed at the same point that it's comparable neighborhoods. There doesn't seem to be any pre-post data on when these buildings were put up. So I wonder about the relevance. But another question is the neighborhoods. Okay, was the Grove School and Hand and the country school built on land that was zoned residential?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I believe I was going to add on to Mark's comments that and I see that we need to make this clearer about uses. So when we say gatherings, we mean programmatic. By far, a majority of the convenings that will be meetings and gatherings and even the events will be programmatic in nature. We're a 40-year-old mission-based foundation. So we have a large history of convening nonprofit leaders, sometimes from all across the country, in the kind of programs that we do. We have some of the top neuroscientists working on learning differences, and we often are able to convene those experts. So the nature of the convening is about education. It is about learning. Our primary activities are about learning and education.
That goes back to my previous question, which is I have no idea what the plan is for the events, or the gatherings or anything, so clarity would be great.
So I think, John Morgan again, are you done with is that the energy conservation and sustainability? Is that our additional information on that, or are you going to actually provide some more information?
I will list it out for you.
All right, so in addition to that, I would really love to see some specifics that you see that the idea of encouraging development for the town. If you could provide some specifics on what the foundation sees as what the advantage to the town is. Either you mentioned visitors and employment, but what are some specifics around?
Benefit for the town.
Right.
Are you asking me to answer that question?
No,
now?
no. Again, this was give you some idea of the additional information. Like you see.
Understand.
I think we're at a good stopping point, actually. How about we take a break for 5 minutes or so? And then come back and then we'll hand over. Informational that we published, so that we can. Aaron, give me a thumbs up. Okay, we're recording again. We'd like to get meeting continuing. And I want to first of all say thanks to all of you for your patience. I know we've had a lot of questions and you've been a good, quiet audience, so thank you for that. I think we're going to have Aaron start with the sign up sheet and we'll go in the order of how people signed up. Does that make sense, Aaron? And we'll be bouncing back and forth between us. Yeah.
So just in terms of the process.
Yeah.
You mentioned there'd be questions, so the public doesn't get to ask questions, we can make statements.
Oh, you can, I'm sorry, you can ask questions or make statements.
Okay.
Sometimes we separate it between pro and con, but we're not doing that tonight.
You're not.
Okay.
Yes,
Hear what you said.
the answer is you can ask a question and make your statements in your same opportunity to be heard.
If one person makes a statement, and you all agree with that person, it would save time, I think, not to hear the same thing over and over again. And then I think also we'd like to have everyone have a chance to speak before we cycle back and have the same speaker ask another question or make another comment. So we'll see how far we get tonight, and we're also bouncing from room to room. You can see we have a podium and a microphone set up in the other room, so they can see and hear us, we can see and hear them.
What about Zoom?
And Zoom as well. We've got a list
They
of
can raise their hand.
participants here. So I think, but Erin, should we start with a sign-up sheet and go through that?
Yes, I was
And
just
then-
coordinating with Maria, sorry.
We're coordinating between rooms and also with Zoom, you're right, with other participants.
Yes, anyone from Zoom will also have an opportunity. You can use the hand raising feature to do that. And I do have a list, a 2-page list. If there are additional folks who, you decide you want to speak, you're welcome. We'll give an opportunity for that as well. Okay, first,
Is there another process question?
No, it's not.
Okay.
and if you are, if it's a little harder to enunciate, you're welcome to use the microphone as well, and we would encourage it. We just ask that you identify yourself for the record, because we do have to take accurate minutes, and so that would be your name and your address. Most of you have those on here, so I'll just begin. First, we have Attorney Bernard Pellegrino.
And I would like to pass the microphone.
I'll be brief. Thank you, Madam Chair. Bernard Pellegrino, attorney with Pellegrino Law Firm in New Haven, 475 Whitney Avenue. I spoke last time. The only thing I wanted to get into the record before any of the neighbors speak is we and you received these 3 reports. And I think 4 o'clock yesterday, we received the brand new site plan at about 5 o'clock today. And obviously the receipt of all of that information within 24 hours of this meeting has not given us and you, I believe, enough opportunity to understand that. So our request is whenever this ends tonight, and you may be done before 10, that this hearing must remain open so that we can adequately, knowledgeably respond and you can understand what has just been submitted. Thank you.
Next, I have Bruce Lockhart of 24 Indigo Trail.
Okay, let me use the.
Yep, you're gonna go right to the podium.
The mic on the podium.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
At the first meeting that the Tremaines came to present, which there was only 3 people from our neighborhood, one of your members asked the Tremaines, what does the town get out of this? It gets nothing out of this. They make all the money. You make nothing. It's a tax exempt foundation. The first thing they're going to do is take the house off the tax rolls because they legally can do that as a tax free foundation. So here are the reasons you need to vote this down. You do not represent the Tremaine Tax-Free Foundation. You represent citizens of Madison. Protect them in their way of existing law that we all abide by. Not exception to those laws by money and power. Point. If you approve this, how can you legally then not approve any other tax-free foundation from buying a home in other existing zoned neighborhoods and doing the same thing? You will never be able to defend it in the courts as they sue you for discrimination. Once you cross the Rubicon, there is no turning back. Once you set a new bar of what is allowed in Madison, every tax-free foundation will be buying up property and taking homes and businesses off your tax rolls. There are already 130 registered tax-free foundations in Madison. By granting them this, you, in essence, will make all other tax-paying citizens to pay more taxes for them. Point. As you said when this was first presented by the Tremaines, quote, your words, "I would not want this in my backyard." And another quote, "Madison has a declining population for the last 9 years." Yes, this is in our backyard and in your own backyards all over town. Not people from out of town who have no intention to live here, but their only intention is to make money for their decreasing trust fund. Point. We need more families to buy homes and put their children in our schools and spend money in our town. Our new schools need children, not people going to invitation-only parties to raise money for the Tremaines, who they then get back into shuttle buses and go to the parking lots on 95 and head home. Tell me, from your own experience, when you go to a function all dressed up, do you go shopping first in that town, or after the function, do you go shopping? No, you go home as fast as you can to get out of your clothes and go to bed. Closes up between 8 and 9 on weekends. This is why we love this town. Here you'll have 245 people representing this petition, over 140 houses that surround this location. When this gentleman talks about valuations of houses, people bought those houses when those schools were in existence. They sold the schools. They bought the houses knowing that that was what they were buying into. This is a whole different ball of wax. Point. Here's a map showing the neighborhood right there, which you've seen on the screen before. There are many buses carrying 10 to 15 people will create a circulating wagon train from parking lots on 95 up and down country lanes at all hours of the day and night. I know you had nothing to do with the Madison Beach Hotel because you were not on the board then. They got all kinds of exceptions, but one of them was to run shuttle buses to their hotel from the same parking lots. So how did that work out for the residents surrounding to the Madison Beach Hotel? It didn't. Because you as a town don't have the resources to monitor any exceptions, you give. Look at the exception you gave to the boatyard on our town line 2 years ago. How is that working out? There it sits with a construction trailer and a chain link fence for the last 2 years, sitting next to a land trust property in the middle of the wetlands, an eyesore. Point. At the last presentation, they inform you that every year the Tremaine Foundation will come before the board and inform you of what they intend to hold as events on the zoned residential neighborhood. Chairman Woods said, we have enough on our plate as it is now. And of course, she is right. You work at night. You come here after your normal working hours. And we thank you for your efforts, because I know it takes a lot to do that. So you work for the town of Madison, but now the taxpayers will be expected to have our representatives, you, on this board, go into the catering business for the Tremaines to approve what they intend to do per year. So now we hear 3 events, but as much as 12 events of 150 people. This engineer showed you a septic tank that's going to have 150 people on a Friday and a Saturday night, 20 feet from the Neck River. Yeah, I'd like to see that engineered septic tank, how often that's going to fail. Safety. Here are the photos of the area. The first one is an attempt of your tax-paying citizens to walk her dog over that bridge. As you can see, she approaches the bridge. She's getting closer to the bridge, and then here comes the car, and she has to jump into the woods to avoid getting run over by the car and getting her dog run over. Here's the lineup of trucks that sometimes have to form on that bridge because they can't get over that bridge. This is the accident that happened on the bridge. This is the garbage that ended up in the Neck River that remained there for a month until we advertised it, and then finally someone came over to get it out of there. And here is the real reason the Tremaines had you postpone the last meeting. Not the reason of heat. They don't really care about the heat, and they don't give a damn about us and the heat. It was because of this accident to keep us off balance and lose our momentum. So they canceled. The first time they canceled was when the New York Times wrote about their architecture. The second time they canceled is when this accident happened on the bridge. I was the first one on the scene of that accident, coming from lunch. I helped the man, all covered with blood, get out of his car, lay him on the street. I then called 911. What did I get? Well, where's the accident? I said, it's in the middle of the bridge. Well, that's not ours. That belongs to Madison. I said, wait a minute. The guy's bleeding here. He's laying on the ground. Can we get an ambulance? What's your name? What's your address? I'll call up Madison. Took 15 minutes before anybody showed up with the man laying on the ground. Point. At the last presentation, they informed you that every year that will come. Well, I already said that. Sorry. So here are the photos. See how she jumped into the bushes? Okay, I already said that. And so we'll move on to the first scene and help that person. Look at the sharp curve in both directions. And the flooding, which I have now in front of you. That happens 5, 6, 7 times a year. The Neck River floods. And it floods not only the bridge, and it floods the street, but it floods the Tremaine's foundation, their proposed land use. So it's not a environmentally safe area to be putting something of a party venue on Friday and Saturday nights of 150 people. So when they do these parties with 150 people and they have the buses, where do you think the buses are going to go? Do you think 150 people are all going to jump on the bus at the 95 parking lot all at one time? No, they're going to come down all of these roads, and once they drop people off in the front of the house, where will the buses go then? You know where they'll go. They'll go up Indigo Trail in our neighborhood. They'll either turn around or they'll sit at the end of the neighborhood, have a few cigarettes, listen to music, or then they'll come down in Kachina and then back again. So you're going to have a constant loop of buses to put money in a tax-free foundation, and your citizens in this area gives you $370,000 in taxes. There are no $500,000 homes in this area. These are areas of over $1 million homes. And why did we buy them? Why did we buy the land? Their grandfather made us sign covenants and to specify that only one house was to be built on each lot. No outbuildings, no commercial venues, no nothing. That man loved the Neck River and he loved the country environment. Here comes the foundation. Forget about Grandpa. We want to make money. We need to make money.
Mr. Lockhart, you're approaching 10 minutes, so do you think you could wrap it up?
I have more to say.
And if you have specific questions for the applicant, that would be useful.
For you, we have questions. For you.
We're not applying.
You're not applying. You're representing us, not them.
We hear you.
Okay, well, take my guy.
You can have
I'm
mine
a
too.
spokesman, I'm a spokesman for this. I live in this right in their backyard.
Okay.
Couple more minutes. Point, at your last meeting, you talked extensively about the height of the new construction near Route 1 at Hammonasset package store. You told them after 10 times before this board to think about the height as 34 feet and not 45 feet, even though the lawyer said at least 6 buildings in Madison were higher. But you said not on Route 1. Go back and rethink it. Then about the parking lot of the new restaurant on Route 1. Where the Winter Club was. Again, you looked at the plans of the new one and you were very concerned with the effect of headlights coming out of the parking lots and shining into citizens' home windows at all hours of the night. I thought, good work. You care about the little citizens of this town. So in God's name, how could you even think twice about this invasion of non-citizens into an area of town 7 days a week? And to give money to the tax-free foundation and destroy all of a part of our town's quality of life of over 180 homes with noise, pollution, cars, buses, garbage trucks, tents, drinking, and light pollution. Point, at the Tremaine Foundation open house, it's very important that you should hear this. I was threatened by the chairman of Madison's Economic Development with witnesses. Quote, if you do not allow this to go in, we will put low-income housing there. Then he finished up with, you are only a small part of Madison. You don't matter. Just in our neighborhood, we pay thousands of dollars in taxes, even without your car tax. This is within 800 feet of this home. Then their lawyer said, which I took as a threat to your board in this last meeting, be careful. You can get a sawmill or a farm or a winery here. Is the Tremaine Foundation going to be milking cows and selling milk or cutting down trees and selling lumber with the Neck River being polluted by cow manure or sawdust? I spoke to your first select woman at a meeting and she said she would talk to him. Talk to him? He should be fired. Why talk to him? He threatened us. He should be fired. But wait, get this. He's also the chair of the Shoreline Arts Commission, which in the last few years received donations of $20,000 per year from the Tremaine Foundation. Oh, how convenient. The first meeting, we were only 3 of us citizens present because we only learned it 2 days before. After the Tremaines were working the town over for months. You said you were invited, your board, you were invited to luncheon at the Madison Beach Hotel, but refused to attend because it would be unethical. Yes, it would be unethical. Good for you. You did the right thing.
I don't think any of us were invited.
Well, we'll go look at the tape, because it's on the tape.
Maybe
It
you
was said.
misheard, because I didn't even know about it until we
Well,
had our.
okay, but it's on the tape. It was made on, at that first remark. Why were the Tremaines allowed to present to the Economic Commission well before you even heard of this plan. When the town is getting them into meetings with town employees even before you heard of this proposal? Does the town bring other developers to meet with officials before they present their proposal to this board? Is the guy trying to bring a taxable restaurant into town, was he shepherded around to town officials? Or offering lunch to employees of our town? If this was the case, we do have a violation of the ethics code of Madison. Point. You can tell why we demolished, can you tell me why we demolished the General's house before our independence and let the Tremaine Foundation brag about the Nazi? No, it's true. That's the truth.
This is irrelevant
It's
to
published
zoning.
truth. It's published truth.
Doesn't matter.
It's not relevant to.
It's not relevant.
No. It's not relative to planning and zoning.
If you bring that into it, you pollute the whole thing. You just can't talk about that. You can't consider who the applicant is.
I'm three generations of veterans. My father died in World War II. Okay? And this I have to look at. Wow. Yeah, that's sad.
Aren't they asking for historical landmark? So why is that not relevant? They're asking for historical landmark as part of their
As
application.
part of the application process, we're not allowed to consider who the applicant is.
But they put that into their application,
I know,
how
and
important that
we're
was
trying
for
to
the
not
restoration
look at
and historical value, which by the way, they haven't touched the house yet because their grandfather meant so much to them.
Okay, we need one person at a time, and again, Mr. Lockhart, if you could wrap it up.
I'm wrapping it up. Citizens have stepped forward to buy this back from the Tremaines and build 3 new homes that would generate $60,000 to $80,000 in new taxes, with families going to 3 schools within 1 mile of this location. This is where a track team runs on its road, where animals cross over and drink in its river. Do the right thing here, as you did, refusing to eat their food at their luncheon. Our group is made up of all walks of life, all religions, all family structures, all races, and all professionals, from CEOs to doctors to hardworking people. We will fight tooth and nail. We don't need an art barn with no art, which she said they didn't have any art. This is masquerading to raise money in a tax-free residential zone neighborhood. Do the right thing and stop the Tremaine circus coming to town. If they wish to teach art, and have them put it in the new academy school that we just spent $19 million to refurbish.
Okay, you're over 15 minutes now, and if it
This
would be fair to
has
let other
caused
people talk.
citizens to go to the emergency room. It has caused people to go to doctors. It has disturbed their vacations, using money intended for weddings, tuitions, sleepless nights, and anxiety over their homes and retirement and happiness. Do the right thing and just shut this down.
Name on the list.
Rich Levin from 48 Indigo Trail.
Try not to repeat what already is.
Okay, tough act to follow. Hi, everybody. I'm Rich Levin, 48 Indigo Trail. First point I'd like to make is, it's not clear to me, and I get the impression it's not clear to the Planning and Zoning Committee either, what we're even being asked to approve here. I gotta say, I've been to every one of these meetings so far, and every time I've been here, the special use exception request has been changed. Today, we hear about this parking, which last time we met, there wasn't going to be any new parking on site, and now there is. We've heard about cafes, we've heard about museum stores. That has changed constantly. So I guess until we have an application that's fairly consistent and stays the same, I can't see how you can approve anything. Okay, moving on. As Bruce had mentioned, a lot of people have insinuated that we're just a few people and that don't want this in our backyard. It's NIMBY mentality. So regarding this, I have several points to make. One, as Bruce pointed out, we're not just a few people. There's hundreds of signatures on that petition. There's lots of people not even in the neighborhood, who have weighed in on this, who don't want this to happen, for the precedent-setting issue that Bruce raised before. And frankly, we don't appreciate feeling gaslighted. The insinuation that we're imagining or over-exaggerating our concerns is insulting, and we won't be silenced. We have proof of our concerns, and we demand that they be considered. Regarding this not in my backyard mentality, again, I think you have it backwards. As Bruce mentioned, Burton G. Tremaine Jr. didn't want anything like this in his backyard. He wrote it down very clearly in 1995 in the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants. Mr. McKeon raised this today. He insinuated that this was neighbors getting together who didn't want things on their own property. No, this was Burton G. Tremaine Jr. saying what he didn't want in his neighborhood. Okay, so we can argue about slivers of land and whether it applies to that sliver or the whole property. This was his intent, plain and simple. He wrote it down. He created Indigo Woods LLC specifically to handle this. And we have all been complying with this for almost 30 years now. Okay, so that has to be taken into consideration. All right, so the benefits versus the risks of the proposed special use. On the risk side, we've heard all about this. Noise, light pollution, traffic, property devaluation, environmental impact, neighborhood disruption, etc. As mentioned, the foundation insinuates that these are non-existent or over-exaggerated, and their evidence, frankly, is tenuous at best. The Planning and Zoning Commission criteria for approval of special use exceptions require considerations of these risks, and they must do so very carefully. On the benefit side, I've heard things from the foundation about the benefits to Madison. However, it seems to me that these benefits have nothing to do with the special use exception for 6 Opening Hill. Foundation could provide these benefits regardless of the approval of the application. I've seen no benefit to Madison that derives directly from the special uses explained in the application. The Tremaine Foundation speaks about preservation. How about preserving the neighborhood as Burton G. Tremaine Jr. wanted to?
Yeah.
They speak about historical significance and restoration. Way before the Tremaine family owned the property, there was a working sawmill on this site. Bruce was sort of joking about this, but why are we talking about restoring that? It has way more historical significance to Madison than 1950s buildings built by a controversial, to say the least, architect. They speak about putting Madison on the map. Madison is already well known and doesn't need the potential infamy from being associated with Philip Johnson. I'd rather leave that to New Canaan. We're much better off being associated with Jacques Pepin. We have severe risks with no direct benefit. Why would the Planning and Zoning Commission approve this application? The Tremaine's Foundation's stated goal was to have the approval of the town and the neighbors. We cannot meet these goals. We can't. We're done with it. You should be too. If the Planning and Zoning Commission really feels that this is only a small number of people that oppose this application, then let's put it to a vote in a referendum. The upcoming election would be an ideal time to ask the residents of Madison at large to make their feelings known.
Roberta Lockhart, 24 Indigo Trail.
Thanks. I'm Dr. Roberta Lockhart. I live at 24 Indigo Trail. I'm actually going to speak with 2 different hats tonight. The first one is as a resident whose property abuts with the proposed changes at 6 Opening Hill. And that's in our backyard, and we have the most to lose. We've lived at this address for about 21 years, and we looked for 5 years to find a property that checked every box on our want list. And we picked a town that we thought was welcoming, that fit our ideas about community, where the townspeople meant something. We come from humble beginnings, my husband and I. He was impoverished growing up, and I had a blue collar family that I grew up in. And so this property is a culmination of years of hard work that we put into it. And so we were very content when we found the property on Indigo Trail. That changed on March 4th, when we received a mailing from the Tremaine Foundation outlining their plans for 6 Opening Hill. We were blindsided and dumbfounded. How could they think that they could do this? And why should their legacy trump ours and those of our neighbors? Never in my wildest dreams or my worst nightmare would I have thought that I'd be standing here in front of you today, fighting to preserve what my husband and I have created. It is surreal. And the stress of living with this threatening us has negatively affected our mental health and our physical health and well-being. And this cannot be minimized. To be forced to give up the serenity of sitting on our back porch, enjoying the Neck River and the sounds of nature in exchange for unwanted sights, smells, noise, and God knows what else will come from 6 Opening Hill is very infuriating. And before that you assume that this is an emotional response, you must realize that this goes beyond emotion, as our legal counsel has outlined. This is clearly a one-way street, in my opinion. $100 million foundation that comes bulldozing its way into our neighborhood, assuming that it will easily get what it wants. And that was a quote from the foundation's president in the CT Insider article, that she thought this was going to be easy. And that it wants, without offering anything tangible to the town of Madison or the many tax-paying neighbors. And the BDC proposal would make you think this is the best thing since sliced bread for the town of property. And the list of their reasons in their letter to me is, their letter of support is, ludicrous, because you're talking about an emotional tie to the property. A foundation doesn't have emotions. People do, and that's proven by the over 300 signatures representing over 174 homes in the petitions that my husband proposed. These people have declared their opposition to the special exception use loudly and clearly, and we deserve to be heard and not minimized. And we've been felt disrespected and disregarded through this whole process from the very beginning, and we're not going to stand for it. So you have the petitions, and contrary to what the representatives of the foundations thinks, we do understand their intent. Right from the very beginning, so you don't really understand what we want. Let us explain to you, we are not stupid, and we do understand their words. And we've read and reread their proposals, and as my neighbor said, it still is not clear what they want to do. And we also have letters from the very beginning from neighbors that succinctly summarize the concerns that we have. I've read and reread their proposals, and I found discrepancies, lack of transparency, contradictions, and convenient omissions. I've read the minutes of meetings and endorsement letters. I've spoken to Foundation President virtually and in person, and I have learned much about zoning laws and regulations, more than I think any of us have ever wanted to learn. And all this combined with the discussions with our legal team and from knowledgeable, intelligent neighbors, I've concluded that the Tremaine proposal is flawed in so many ways, and I feel that it would be irresponsible to even consider their request and to go forward with this. So that's the hat that I wear as the neighbor. Now I'd like to put my physician hat on and kind of recap a few things that we have some frustrations with. So back on June 4th, we had, we meaning the physicians that live in our neighborhood, had composed a letter requesting that the meeting not be held in this facility because of lack of air conditioning. And that letter was signed by the physicians in our neighborhood. It was hand-delivered by my husband to planning and zoning, to the select woman, and to the town planner. And it was also emailed to them. And we got crickets. Nothing after that, no response to that. And then lo and behold, a letter came postponing the June meeting because of air conditioning. I just want to quickly read, we are the group of local physicians that live in Madison and attended the previous planning and zoning meeting on May 16th. It's come to our attention that the air conditioning at the town hall may not be fixed in time for the upcoming June planning and zoning meeting. The May 16th meeting lasted more than 4 hours and the AC wasn't working, causing the crowded room to reach almost sauna-like conditions. The main room was at capacity, as was the overflow, and we were told that additional people had to be turned away. The room was extremely dangerous heat levels, especially for the more vulnerable residents that attended the meeting. They included elderly, pregnant women, children, and other with various medical conditions, all of whom were in attendance and deserved to be there in person. We had significant concerns about the heat level. We are deeply concerned for the next meeting where the temperature in June is likely to be even higher. We strongly oppose leaving the next meeting in the town hall, and we had it all signed. And like I said, we got nothing. So we've gone beyond that. So I have a petition here signed by a number of physicians, and I'd like to read the cover letter, and then I'll present the signed petitions, and then I'll be finished. Dear members of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission, we are writing this letter as strongly concerned healthcare professionals who live and treat patients on the shoreline. As you know, Opening Hill Road is an extremely narrow and already congested road. Many residents walk their children in strollers and dogs on this road. Additionally, local children ride bikes along the road, and the Daniel Hand cross-country team runs along this road. The road is on a local school bus route, and some of us have unfortunately treated pedestrian and cyclists full-body traumas at the Goose Lane Emergency Department from accidents that have occurred on Opening Hill Road in this location. With the proposed increase in operations by the Tremaine Foundation, this takes an already dangerous situation and almost guarantees a terrible and, most importantly, preventable tragedy. We urge you to consider the safety of your citizens and children in the area and make the right decision of denying the Tremaine Foundation a special exemption request. Sincerely, Shoreline Healthcare Professionals. And there were, there were 42 physicians, 5 advanced practice nurse practitioners, 4 registered nurses, and 2 healthcare related people. And like I said, I'll give you the original copy of that. So in conclusion, going both paths, both as a neighbor that's abutting that property and as a physician that lives in that neighborhood and has colleagues that are familiar with that neighborhood, I strongly encourage this commission to deny the special exception. And there really isn't, there's no negotiating it in my opinion. Thank you very much for your time. We read them. All the letters that are on file, we read them. We don't have to read them here. We don't respond to them because we are not allowed to have ex parte communications, even among ourselves, when there's a public hearing open. I just want to make sure you understand that so you're not thinking that we're not getting the message. We are. Okay.
Peggy Cohen, 5 Opening Hill.
Well, I stand proudly with my neighbors and with the people that spoke before me. Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners, well, just to set the record straight, my proper name is Margaret Cohen. My husband, Larry Lawrence Cohen, and I own and reside in 5 Opening Hill Road. Our property directly faces 6 Opening Hill Road. We are deeply opposed to this zoning exception. Attorney Pellegrino's presentation and the many, many articulate letters from our neighbors have outlined the legal justifications to deny the application. I share their well-documented concerns about safety, parking, and environmental issues. I'm not sure if you're familiar with 5 Opening Hill Road. Larry and I are grateful to be stewards of that historic house. It was our dream to raise our family, children, and grandchildren surrounded by like-minded neighbors in a tranquil, peaceful, 100% rural setting, not across the street from an event center. The applicant is saying their proposal will help our neighborhood. But actions tell a different story. For over 2 years, there has been little effort on their part to restore the estate they claim to have a cherished connection with. To look across the street and watch the decomposition is heartbreaking. Our historic property contains a beautiful pond known as Woods Pond. You saw it on the maps earlier, a waterfall, and a mill house. It was a working sawmill that we restored. Coming north on Open Hill Road, it is a postcard moment.
Yes, it is.
The scenic view as you come over a narrow bridge on a winding road is enticing. For obvious reasons, as a concerned mom and grandmother, we have had to post no trespassing signs. Sadly, these signs are often ignored. This was blatantly demonstrated by Mr. Woods, chairman of the EDC, on Sunday, April 14th, the afternoon of their open house. Mr. Woods' trespassing was witnessed by my husband Larry and an on-duty police officer. We have serious concerns about the likelihood of the applicant's guests coming on our property, blocking the road, the driveways, and preventing access to our beloved home. In effort to protect the neighborhood and our investment, an offer of purchase has been extended to the applicants. This offer has still not been responded to. And as Bruce mentioned, we just wanted the board to know they have options. In conclusion, please, we need your support to maintain our neighborhood. We are tax-paying citizens. We are the families that support the Madison community. Please preserve our public health, our safety, our welfare, and property values. Thank you for considering my very personal and emotional plea.
Jeffrey Capone, 153 Nortontown Road.
I'm 67 years old and I've become an activist. My family and I reside at 153 Nortontown Road, directly across 6 Opening Hill Road, and next to our dear friends Larry and Peggy Cohen at 5 Opening Hill Road. I've written to this board on numerous occasions. I'm going on the assumption you've actually read my letters. However, I do take exception to a number of the concerns that have been raised in the applicant's application. Putting Madison on the map. The applicant suggests their development of 6 Opening Hill Road will put Madison on the map is both condescending and insulting. Madison is on the map, and it's on the map for the lifestyles we're trying to maintain by getting this application denied. Actual art. For the applicant to suggest there is a pent-up demand to visit 6 Opening Hill Road to commune with a building that housed art some 40 years ago is absolutely delusional, if not absurd. It's been my experience over 67 years. When people wish to view art, they go to a museum. You'll find actual art there. There is nothing unique about 6 Opening Hill Road. 6 Opening Hill Road was the home of a privileged family with an art collection that entertained celebrated guests. The family is gone, the art is gone, and the celebrated guests are gone. Commission members, please don't be swayed by privileged outsiders wielding their inherited wealth in the deceptive name of philanthropy. The attempt to secure a special use exception couldn't be further from a philanthropic act. Early in my career, I had the privilege of working for Hank Greenberg, CEO and chairman of American International Group, a legend in the financial service industry. And at the start of every partners meeting, he would remind us of the founding principle of our organization. He would say, it's not about doing what is legal, it's about doing what is right. Attorney Pellegrino has meticulously outlined all the legal justifications requiring the denial of this special use application. So I'm not going to go through that lengthy list. Tonight's presentation by the applicant was another act of desperation of a flawed, ill-conceived application. 2 additional misplaced studies, comparisons of no relevance whatsoever to this neighborhood. Seriously, when is this gonna end? It needs to end tonight. This application in no way, shape, or form meets the criteria to preserve our public health, safety, welfare, public values, property values. It fails on every issue. The development of 6 Opening Hill Road into anything other than a residence is wrong. You know it, we know it, and I would imagine most of the applicant's family knows it as well. This committee has an obligation first to the tax-paying citizens of this neighborhood and not to privileged outsiders wielding their inherited wealth. We have placed our trust in you, our town officials, that you will be there when we need you most. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that time is now. Step up, do what is right, deny this application, preserve our public health, safety, welfare, and property values. Good evening.
Anna Fragla?
Afrogola.
Oh,
It's phonetic.
there's no O.
Oh.
Sorry, I apologize.
You say your name again.
All right. I guess I should be an alias. Good evening. Is this working?
Yes.
Okay.
Just hold it close.
Hold it close.
Hold it close. Anne Afrogola, 51 Indigo Trail. Tough act to follow, my goodness. To let everyone know, we've been property owners in Madison for 47 years. We built our first house on Pheasant Lane in 1977, and we are one of the 5 original owners in Indigo Woods. We bought our property from Burton Tremaine through Burton Wilcox back in 1996. Numerous letters have been received outlining objections to clauses in the amended filing. And I based my talk tonight on the amended filing, and then the other paperwork came through within the last 24 hours. So I'll try and update a little bit as I go along. My objections basically include very specific demographic and geographic information not previously discussed or documented. In the amended filing under section 3, number 2, no street parking shall be permitted. That was talked a little bit, tonight in some regard, but this statement has crucial safety implications specifically for Indigo Trail. There are 10 homes on my street. Residents include 7 medical doctors, 6 elementary school children. 10 of our residents are over 65, of which 7 are over 70 and 1 is 80. The road can never be obstructed. In terms of it has to be an open lane of traffic to flow. So no street parking. I don't see how you can enforce that. The level of activity outlined in this filing, it just defies common sense. How can on the street parking, not occur? And to coincide with on the street parking, Indigo Trail is a cul-de-sac. And if I could show you quickly, on this map, our house is here. We're right at the end of the cul-de-sac. Okay, so when you come in, there's no outlet. And the reason why that's important is because there's been a substantial increase in traffic since this filing. Oh, thank you. And of course, they're turning around in front of my house. I mean, I can see it. There, you know, there's only one way in and one way out. Even though there are little signs up on the street that says no outlet, if you're just looking to be a curiosity seeker, I mean, you're really not paying attention. But about 2 weeks ago, what happened, a cul-de-sac, two of my neighbors had their landscapers there. And I happened to be out with the dog. Here come these two great big SUVs, they happen both to be white. And so when they come down to the cul-de-sac, they got stuck. There's no place for them to go in turn, you know, as far as turning around. These roads were built 30 years ago. They don't have the width, you know, for the cars that we have today. And then the other interesting thing that happened in terms of controlling traffic, had the dog out again one night, maybe 10 days ago. We're at the end of the corner, we're Opening Hill and Indigo Trail. So 6 Opening Hill is right there, the house. So here comes another SUV, only this time it pulls into their driveway and it's 7:30 at night. So the curiosity seekers, I don't see how you can possibly control that. And this has nothing to do with attendance and activities at the house. And then going for the report that was submitted within the last 24 hours, the SLR report, in the evaluation for the recommendations, they said to have the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation required to manage on-site parking using signage. Okay, and then as the report goes on, how much signage can there be in this small little area? And then it also said to have planning and zoning install permanent signage. Well, who's paying for that? The taxpayers? And then it went on to say in the one part, which I love this word, they were suggesting police, robust parking enforcement. How is that going to happen? I mean, are we calling them every day? And then the next recommendation that they made was require police at special events. Once again, who's paying for this? Okay, going on to section 4 in the amended filing under events, which means indoor and outdoor experiences, receptions, open houses, presentations, lectures, classes, and exhibits, all of which are or may be open to the public by advance registration up to 25. And then here we go again. How are we controlling all of this traffic? Don't miss the bus. You know, they're going to miss the bus, and then what? They'll want to go to the event. And this is 7 days a week. We're not talking about that. You're talking about the hours previously, but this filing states 7 days a week. And then my other question was, when you have guests on site and they have breaks or at lunchtime, are they going to be taking walks in the neighborhood? I mean, are they going to, I mean, the little 5 acres, it's not that big. So are they going to decide, gee, let me see what's over here? I mean, our neighborhood safety is just not tenable, you know, under these circumstances. And then it went on to say in the same section, referring to the events up to 150, and this by invitation only. Are guest lists going to be made public? Who are these people coming into our neighborhood? The wording is extremely vague. Is it a fundraising event? It said possibly 2 out of the 3 might be. Well, what's the third event? Is it going to be a family event for the Tremaines? Is it going to be a wedding? Is it going to be a graduation? They own the property. And then going on from there, section 5, on-site residences. We talked about that for a little bit because then now they're changing the numbers for that. But with the neighborhood demographics, they're only talking about doing professional vetting. How is that acceptable? Once again, not knowing who these people are coming into our neighborhood. Our home was robbed. I don't know about other people in our neighborhood, but back in May, it was Memorial Day of 2011. Now you're going, okay, fine, that was 13 years ago, but still being susceptible to an influx of people that we have no idea who they are, I'm very concerned about that. I have a right to know, I think, who the transient house guests are going to be. Okay, and in regard to house guests, are they going to be allowed to bring their pets? Are we going to now have people walking their dogs? We don't have sidewalks. So if you're going to be walking your dogs, I mean, strangers walking their dogs, you're going to be walking your dog on our property. So that hasn't been discussed. And then the same thing, will the house guests then once again decide, let's go for a walk in the neighborhood? Bruce mentioned just briefly in terms of the number of nonprofits. I went today on GuideStar Inc. and found that there are 61 nonprofits registered in Madison. Not all of them are bricks and mortar. If this application is accepted, what legal premise is there to deny other nonprofits to buy homes and set up shops? If someone's going to say, I had a tie to Madison, maybe my great uncle lived here. If they're a collector, maybe he collected comic books. I mean, it's going to be so vague in terms of if you allow a nonprofit in a residential RU1 neighborhood, how do you prevent other nonprofits from not doing the same? I don't understand what legal premise there would be. How are we going to protect our family neighborhoods and also our real estate investment? And then in conclusion, what I'd like to state though also is a special use exception is a contract. There are no clauses for violations in this filing. There are no penalties outlined for the violations, and there's no designated outside and partial third party to oversee and enforce the filings. So when is a special use exception revoked? Are they ever? What guidelines do we have here? And I think in terms of being there are just no parameters here, to protect our neighborhood or the taxpayers, but also what about additional filings, which are planned, creating a larger venue? The reason all of these complications exist, this is a nonprofit business in an RU1 neighborhood setting. If it were in a business district, none of this would apply. We wouldn't be here. All of these complications, because they chose this neighborhood to set up shop, it would not exist. But that is a serious question in terms of violations of this contract. Who are we contacting? What's the follow through? What are the penalties? Can this be revoked? Thank you.
Rachel Furman here?
She's currently unavailable. She's one of the physicians and she's actually at the hospital right now.
So
So I
she's
was
not
the
here.
one, right, I was the one who did the petition on the healthcare workers.
Thank you. Kim Weston, 111 Opening Hill.
Hi, everyone. I'm an artist. I am at 111 Opening Hill. I am a Black Indigenous woman. I watched my mother work in South Carolina with no shoes. She's one of 12 children. She worked really hard to get to the north. We lived in the South Bronx and it was burnt out. And for art, my mother went to the Five and Dime store and took a tablecloth and put it on the wall. And that was the first art that I had, right? And I watched her work really, really hard to get us out of the South Bronx. And we moved from what I would call the old TV show, Good Times, to the next house in the Bronx, which was, let's say it was what's the next show, Laura, that was after Good Times?
Moving on up.
Moving on up. So we moved to co-op. That was the next one. And then she got a job helping senior citizens. And then she moved to Queens, where she bought a house with her husband, her new husband. And then eventually we became Bel Air. And she got a new house where we could walk around it. And I went off to Cooper Union and got a full scholarship. And I met my wife in Philadelphia one day when I was visiting in a candy store. And after that, I started painting t-shirts. And we started a business. And I bought my first home at 26 years old painting t-shirts. And then I followed her here to Connecticut, and she got a job at Yale. And I started teaching, and I started doing photography again. And now I own Wabi Gallery in New Haven. And we have 6 children. And we lived in New Haven for 21 years. And the violence around us became more than what we could handle. We worked so hard to get our tribe out of New Haven. When we found our home, we found our dream home here. We had peace. We purposely didn't buy in a cul-de-sac because we didn't want people around us. We wanted peace. We wanted quiet. We wanted to be around the land because part of our culture is to ground ourselves with the land and have the animals around us. And so we have bears that come up on our property. We have deer. We have fox. We have coyotes, lots of coyotes. We have so many animals that touch our property. And we have that Neck River where we go all the time. We say prayer and have ceremony there. We have an auntie that comes down from Canada, who's Mi'kmaq, who shows us about different species of plants that we can use for healing on this land. And so we don't want that to go away. We don't want the noise. We don't want the traffic. And we have small children that walk that road to get to the bus stop, to the point where people pick them up and they know not to go into cars, but they get in anyway because they're trusting. I don't want to take that away from them because I'm the second generation of hard-working people, second, third, fourth generation of hard-working people. I fought to get to the American dream. And I'm probably the darkest person in here unless you have a tan, because I don't tan very well. Right? But we're only 600 feet from where you're trying to go. The land means so much to us. The safety of our children means so much to us. We've had issues with people trying to take our children from us. That's the biggest fear. That's why we moved out here, because we wanted safety for our children. We don't lock our doors at night sometimes because, not that I want to say that out loud so the world knows. We're locking them down. ADT, click, click, but that's the kind of feeling of safety that I have when I'm out here. I don't want strangers coming in to my neighborhood like that. And I love the arts. I know what it's like to run art programs. I know you want to have events. I know you want to have special people come out and do residencies. All of that stuff is wonderful. But my community and what I invested to be here means more than anything to me. My mother is looking down at me right now, saying, you go. She's looking at Laura saying, you guys make the best partners, right? Because Laura came from the same beginnings as I did. We've been partners for over 27 years. We've walked this road together. We have 6 children, a Nana at home, and her father at home. And they're divorced. So we don't want to mess up our little happy home with dealing with noise and the traffic. I want to thank my community, my neighbors, and your homes. I want to be like you. You know what? I love the arts. I appreciate what you're trying to do. But this neighborhood is so special. So special. And I worked so hard. We have worked so hard to get here. This is the American dream. And Bruce and everyone in the community, they've really put their heart and soul in. Bruce comes from the same place as I do. He looks different, but he came from the same humble beginnings as I do. And I have so much respect for him. So thank you, Bruce. Thank you, community. I don't want my children to not know what it's like to have this kind of support around them. I think art has a place, but this community doesn't necessarily need it here. I didn't buy this home. We didn't buy this home to have an art center next to it. Not this close.
Fuller Weston, 111 Opening Hill.
Hi, everybody. I'm not going to take up too much time because my wife did a very, very good job explaining. But I do want to say that I agree with everyone. I admire you for wanting to have art residencies and wanting to do what you want to do. You're just doing it in the wrong spot. It's just in the wrong spot. Take it to a commercial place. It would be a horrible foundation if you didn't grow. You need to come back here and you need to come to the commission and you need to tell them what you're going to do. That's what you said the last time, that you were going to come and tell them that you were going to grow. You were going to tell them what you were going to do for the following year going forward. If you're going to grow, you are not going to grow in that spot because you are limited in space. You're limited in what you can do. And you're also limited by the amount of, you do not have the support of the people around you. So you are fighting an uphill battle, and I'm speaking to you directly. They know how we feel, right? They know how you feel. But my 12-year-old son, who's this big, walks on a road that you're going to be having these buses go up and down, right? And there's no sidewalks, none whatsoever. And that's what I'm worried about. I talked to you personally on the phone, right? We had a one-on-one Zoom together, right? Because I wanted to know whether or not the people that you were going to be having here to have whether they're in residencies or having their experience of a lifetime, in your building, having their artwork experience, if they were going to be vetted, right? Because children don't need to be exposed to things that they don't need to be exposed to, right? My job is to protect them, and I'm a mama bear, right? So I'm going to protect. I need to know. And if there's a problem, you're not going to be there for me to come knock on the door to say, hey, guess what? We have a problem and we need to talk. And you haven't told me yet who your point person is going to be. So that when I come and knock on that door and say, hey, we have a problem, is it gonna be a different person every time? Or are you gonna have somebody there 365 to say, we're gonna handle this problem right here, right now? You know, that's not my only issue. My issue is the parking. My issue is that narrow bridge. My issue is the traffic going up and down. My issue is that you have not even attempted to address the wetlands that are there. And the fact that all of those beautiful animals you are going to disturb. I'm Native American, and that is my #1 priority on my land. I honor my land first. We have gardens, we have orchards on my land. That's what I teach my children. That's what we're here to do. We are caretakers of this land. Not one of us here, not one of us in this room owns anything. We are caretakers of this land. And the sooner everybody realizes that, the sooner we will start taking care of our planet better. Okay? So the fact that you haven't even addressed the wetlands and the fact that you're going to have all these people, even if it's 1 time a year, 3 times a year, 12 times a year, however many times a year, with the big events. Okay? Because we can talk about the little events, but the big events are the big problem. The big events that you're going to have all these people and all of that waste and all of that food waste and all of that fried grease waste and all of that other stuff, where's that going to go? That Neck River is right there. Those wetlands are right there. You know, do you know how many deer bed down in your backyard? Do you know that there's a bear that lives back there? Because I got pictures of him on my deck. That's a mama bear. That means that there's cubs around. There's a lot of things that you don't know because you don't live there. But we live there. And that's why I would like you to really take consideration. Really think about taking your great idea and moving it someplace else.
Here we have about a half an hour left in the meeting this evening for 10 o'clock. Next on the list is Bernadette Haydot.
Oh, no. Lamonti Hackett.
From 181 Green Hill Road.
Madison. Been here since 1978.
Are you here, Bernadette?
I'm here.
If you could please come up to
Well,
the.
I'm going to defer to the previous speakers. I think they did an elegant job and I don't want to waste anybody's time.
Next on the list is John Bodrin from 188 Opening Hill Road. He's in the other room. Okay, if you're in the other room, John, you could just go right up to the podium.
I'll just do. I'm his wife. I think we're going. Okay, for a second. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, great. Nope, they don't pick you up right there.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Bodrin. I'm John's wife. He just went outside to get a jacket and he'll be right back. And I'm supposed to go, okay, here he is. Awesome timing.
Come on.
Nice job.
Did a great job.
Folks, for your patience, the air conditioning is working just fine. My name is John Bodrin. I live at 188 Opening Hill Road. I know this has been said earlier by my good neighbors. But what I want to point out once again is what we're doing is we're weighing the impact versus the benefit, right? And impact is relative, is it not? Impact with regards to this particular neighborhood, this community, to call it RU1 really doesn't do it justice. I mean, we're talking about tracts of property that include Cockaponset State Forest, Madison Land Trust. I live on a private road. I walk across the street and I can enter the Neck River Trail. I can go further down and take a nice long walk on the Double Loop Trail. Given what I do for a living, it's very stressful. I moved from Milford specifically for what my wife and I call silence and stars. It's that serenity. It's being able to walk my dog at night. You may see me. I'm wearing the reflective vest with the headlamp on. It's hearing those crickets. It's hearing the frogs. It's hearing that Neck River, right? That's why I came here. This helps me with regards to my own mental health. And it can't be minimized. It can't be overlooked. And when we talk about the benefits, when they speak about charity, right? They're a charitable organization. What that is supposed to mean is that they are providing relief to the community of a burden, right? That the community carries, but they need help with. That was the whole, background behind charitable organizations and why they deserve this special tax exemption, right? This nonprofit status, because they are helping alleviate a burden that the community carries. I don't see how the Tremaine Foundation, right? These uppity folk coming in, right? Having their lavish parties, creating all kinds of racket, how that alleviates any burden that we carry as a community. I have colleagues who worked on planning and zoning commission boards, and I brought this to their attention, and they think it's a no-brainer. They think this is, John, they can't do that. That sounds like commercial. When you talk about two experienced guests, how is that any different than an Airbnb? Sounds like a commercial enterprise, right? And when you enter that commercial sphere, you're at risk of losing your nonprofit status, right? As soon as you do that, it's a very strict classification. Why? Because your nonprofit status creates more taxes for us that pay the taxes when you don't. So, one last thing, to make a claim of conflict of interest, with all due respect, Madam Chairwoman, given your background, given your education, given your employment, okay, it's replete with architecture, art. You've curated the Walters Art Gallery, Baltimore. I lived in Baltimore. The Yale Art Gallery. And it's not about saying, hey, I assure you there's no conflict of interest. It's the appearance of a conflict of interest. Why? Because we want to provide the public with faith that the system is going to work the way it's supposed to, okay? It's the appearance of, and it's hard not to see that there's a conflict of interest, given this is artistic, philanthropic, educational. That was your wheelhouse. That was your sphere, right? Was it not? For decades. Okay? And, I think that really, that needs to be taken a look at. Because I'll tell you what, if this is granted, what are people going to say? That the chairwoman was compromised. Thank you very much.
Brittany Bodrin, you're next.
Do they both need to talk?
Sure we do. For being fair. Okay, good evening. My name is Brittany Bodrin. I live at 188 Opening Hill Road. I'm a Madison resident, a mom, and a public school English teacher. One of the main reasons my husband and I moved to Madison was for the excellent reputation of its schools. Having taught at Daniel Hand and my 8-year-old daughter currently attending the Jeffrey School, we quickly learned that the public school system's excellent reputation is well-deserved. We feel great pride in not only the school's exceptional academic instruction, but also in how Madison Public Schools celebrate diversity, promote inclusion, and teach tolerance. This is why I'm extremely disturbed and upset over the Tremaine Foundation's substantial relationship with the architectural designer Philip Johnson, a known racist, fascist, white supremacist, and Nazi sympathizer. But I am even more shocked and dismayed that my own town of Madison could even consider accepting the Tremaine's application, knowing of the foundation's profound relationship with Philip Johnson. I can't imagine that the town of Madison would ever wish to celebrate and honor the work of a designer who was a flagrant racist and Nazi sympathizer. Some of the most esteemed institutions of higher education in the world, such as Princeton University and even Philip Johnson's alma mater, Harvard University, have denounced Johnson's racism and rejected his name. How could the town of Madison, in good conscience, embrace and improve Johnson's name through accepting Tremaine's application? How could we all look our children in their faces and say that we condemn bigotry of all kinds, while at the same time laud and praise the Tremaine's designer who supported Hitler? Is bigotry and hypocrisy the kind of legacy that we wish for our town, our community, and our children? Please say no to the Tremaine Foundation's application. Thank you.
Nancy Sutherland, 25 Beaver Pond Road.
Here. I didn't plan to speak at all tonight, but I'm very moved by everything that has been stated by the residents that live nearby and are my friends. I love this area. I live fairly close on Beaver Pond Road. I've been here for 40 years. I'm very much interested in the outdoors. I love this area of conservation. I'm on Neck River at least once a week. For COVID, I walked every one of the 22 land conservation trails, every trail on that. And I specifically love this particular area. So I asked the board to consider things that are very practical, such as that water and the flood zone. And will the flooding cause the water to be contaminated? What kind of protection is being taken to assure that any of the waste that's going to be generated in this concentrated area is, taken into account? I only know anecdotally messages about ledges and how there were some factors that weren't taken into consideration. And I would like to be sure that you have the forethought to really examine some of these more technical issues that would harm the environment. And of course, I agree with everybody said. It's a lovely community, and I'm so very happy to hear all your great comments. That's it.
I have Francis family and then Laura Francis. Is there an individual?
Okay, I'm gonna try to paraphrase because I feel like a lot of people did say a lot of what I wanted to say already.
Excuse me, are you Laura?
I'm Laura.
Okay, just
Yeah,
wanted to
sorry.
make sure. Thank you.
222 Opening Hill Road. We've lived here for 10 years. We have 4 kids. 2 of them are with a babysitter. Second, because we want to be here, it's really important to us. I'm a teacher. I'm very involved in several nonprofits in Madison, such as the PTO co-president, Girl Scout troop leader that just got the accessible beach mat installed at West Wharf. And I'm on the board for Peace, Love, and Accessibility. I know what it means to volunteer, to follow a mission statement for the greater good of the organization and our town. I vote in every election to trust that those elected, appointed, do best for their constituents. I am grateful to all of you on this board for volunteering your time to be here for the greater good of Madison. And I ask you to please listen to your constituents that this application directly negatively affects the residents' quality of life. I am disheartened by the feeling that many of you on this board may be against the residents of Madison, starting with the limited access to this meeting in person. It is my hope that you do not accept this application and stop wasting more of all of our time, similar to our neighbors at the Ledges, who had to take the ruling all the way up to the Connecticut Supreme Court to get their ruling overturned. And please protect the Madison residents, as many of you claim you are, and keep commercially zoned areas commercial. Okay, this is a commercially zoned project, which it really feels like it is, not like the nonprofits I've been a part of with what they're trying to do. Stop with these special exceptions that are wasting a lot of our time and resources. Can you imagine what all of these people, the money, the time that they've spent on this, could have spent better use to making Madison more better in other ways? And I know you asked to not have it be brought back to the architect, but it is important. Can you imagine our kids being like, well, why, mommy, why is that, what is that place for? Well, it's for art. Well, what kind of art do they have? Well, actually, they don't have any art. You can just imagine the questions that come with this, and I totally agree with everything Brittany said. And I do think it's important that we do consider that, because this is a choice that we're all making if we accept this, to allow that to be part of the exception. So that alone should just make this go out the window. In addition to all the other reasons everyone has highlighted, please remember you cannot enforce these rosy stipulations that they're trying to say they're going to do to accommodate everything we're asking for. This is a slippery slope, that's going to just keep us in a state of stress and anxiety to police these neighbors who have no real investment other than monetary to our town. Thank you.
Ted McMahon, 33 Winter Hill.
Oh, that's Kyle's
Oh.
stuff. He's the other Francis family.
I'm sorry.
What's your name?
Kyle Francis. Yep, Francis family. Thank you for these pictures. Kyle Francis, 222 Opening Hill Road, Madison, Connecticut, right down the hill from the dilapidated 6 Opening Hill that the Tremaine family has not touched since they've owned it. Waiting for a special approval, but has sentimental value, right? Right. Okay, so let's start off. Show of hands. Who wants their kids to go to school, a great school in the area? Everyone raise their hands, even Tremaine family. Who wants their kids to go to a great school?
No.
Who wants their kids to go to a dilapidated barn from a disgraced architect with no art in it? Please raise your hands.
You could keep the sarcasm down and get to the point of what you're trying to say.
Yeah, make a statement about the project and application versus.
Okay.
We've heard from a
I'll
lot
get
of
to
people
my,
already.
appreciate your comments. I'll get to my background. 20 years in finance, and that financial evaluation that I just heard is the biggest joke anyone in this room has ever heard. That was filled with sarcasm. To compare this project to 3 schools in the area and also compare the appraisal values over the last 2 years is an absolute joke. Every single person in Madison has had their home value increase over the last 2 years. It has nothing to do with the country school. It has nothing to do with Hand, and it has nothing to do with the proposed project from the Tremaine family. This will decrease everybody's home value in Madison, Connecticut.
What is the basis of your statement? Where do you have the information?
Mike, we don't need to.
You know, we don't need to-
I thought you couldn't ask questions.
Right.
So I would ask, basis of my statement, I would ask for a fair comparison, for a financial comparison to something that's apples to apples. Say maybe the Stony Creek Brewery, how home evaluations around that area went down in value dramatically. Because the country school was here when everyone moved in. And because everyone loves the country school. And because the country school doesn't have 12 parking spots that are being put in people's neighborhoods that are gonna flash lights in their yards. That decreases home values. So I would ask the board that we have a study done on a real comparison, not three values in an area that are not comparable at all. That's what I would ask. Lastly, I feel like this was downplayed when talked about in the study. And I get it, because the Tremaine family doesn't want to talk about this that much. Two of my kids are here, Lily and Lila, here to support, way past their bedtime. My wife was at this crash as well. This is my best friend of almost 40 years. The police said he would have died that day without a seatbelt. This is what we're talking about. These are our lives. These are the people of this community. He would have died that day. That bridge is not safe. It's not safe for them to say they're going to put in some extra guardrails. That can't be policed. They're just changing their application every single time they're asked in one little way to get their foot in the door. And that's not right. This should have already been denied.
We have 10 minutes left, so, make the most of your time. And I think
I'll try to make the most of my time.
save 5 minutes to wrap up then and take a vote on next steps.
So I'm Ted McMahon. I live at 33 Winter Hill Road. I've been a resident and taxpayer for 40 years. This is not my backyard, okay? I'm about a mile and a half away. But somebody brought it up and I thought maybe I'd be the only one to say it this way. But not in my wildest dreams would I ever think I'd be here tonight talking about putting a special use exemption in the residential neighborhood, which can be anywhere in Madison, any one of your backyards, okay? I don't know where the hell this regulation or statute came from, but it is bizarre that we would allow anywhere in town a commercial enterprise to be put in somebody's backyard. I just don't understand it. This is a round peg in a square hole. It doesn't belong there. And as our attorney, Mr. Pellegrino said, you have to deny this application in totality 100%, because these people are trying to take a mile an inch at a time. There's no way we're going to be able to police them if you grant them any exception, because we've seen from their disingenuous behavior so far that they cannot be trusted. They will smile at us. We'll do whatever you want us to do. But I don't, like many of you said, I don't know what this application is for. I don't know what an event is. I don't know what a group is. You're going to have corporate retreats. There is no art. You can go on and on and on. I don't know what this thing is. And I've gone on GuideStar. And if you look at what their contributions are, there's no rhyme or reason. To me, this looks like a cookie jar for their relatives to give out money to whatever they want to. So I just don't understand what's going on here. The traffic study, I'll just touch on that. The recommendation was, yeah, the road's a little narrow. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna cut down some trees. By the way, that hedge you mentioned, that arborvitae hedge, that's gone. I don't know what you're thinking about, but that's gone. Because that in the sight line, 400 feet, I drive that road every day. There is not 400 feet of sight line in either direction. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm surprised the average speed is 39 miles an hour. There's no way you're gonna be able to get buses and cars to be moving in and out of that driveway as proposed. And the bridge, you know, the guardrail, So what are we gonna do? What did they recommend? We're gonna put guardrails on the inside of that bridge. So now instead of a 21-foot bridge, it's gonna be 20. So once again, it doesn't belong there. Round peg in a square hole. I'm done. Please do your jobs here. And despite what the attorney, Mr. McKeon, said, you do not have to approve this. He said that the last meeting. He told you, you don't have to approve this. I'm sorry, you have to approve it. Very sorry. You have to approve it. No, you don't. That's why we're all here, to hear the good and the bad about this. And the bad is so much worse. So thank you for your time.
Ed Rizzo, 28 Kachina Way.
Guess we saved the best for last. I'll only take 20 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So I'll make it quick. Obviously, we strenuously object. Ed Rizzo, I live at 28 Kachina Way. We applied in the back of Indigo Trail. We lived there for 8 years. So I have 2 children. One just graduated from Daniel Hand, and my daughter is going to be a sophomore. They play in the neighborhood. They use the streets. The idea of a couple of different things just to talk on, but just to talk about as a parent, the idea of transient individuals with no background checks, unaware of who these people are, coming in, not knowing who our neighbors are any longer, not knowing who is around my children. It's very disconcerting. It's not when we moved here. We moved here from New York. We moved here for the peace and quiet, and we moved to this beautiful neighborhood, and really because of the Cohen's house, really is why. So thank you guys. Just beautiful. And we want to live here for the rest of our lives. But I can tell you right now that this project is very disconcerting for, obviously you can hear it, but certainly for me as well. I want to make sure it's expressed. Someone just asked the question, how do we know property values will go down? I think it was you, Michael. I don't think you need an appraisal degree to understand that if you had a listing for a home next to an event center with events that are going on till 10 o'clock at night with loud music, I also heard there's no noise pollution. I don't know how that's even possible. I don't know how we're not going to have additional lights in an event space that's going till 10 o'clock. It's pitch black in our neighborhood, pitch black. So I'm confused. I continue to be confused. I think some of the commissioners have been confused. How our property values wouldn't be diminished. It's just common sense. They would be, period. We have an obligation to protect the individuals who have made that investment. So that's one of the pieces, and obviously the traffic and safety we talked about. So those are the 2 primary things I just want to talk about. I think the traffic study has been discussed, but I mean, just to show you, I mean, this has been shown, but I'll show you another example of it because I was there right after Bruce arrived. But this is a pedestrian. This is someone riding a bike who, probably missed being killed by minutes when he came down the street right after the car flipped over. So this is the street we all live on right there. It's right in front of the property. So it's a very, very severe, it's a very serious issue. And this is all the traffic study that should need to be done to protect our children, to protect our property values. We implore you to do the right thing, reject this completely. So thank you guys very much for the job.
I think we'll stop here, reconvene, and we have a meeting coming up on August 1st.
Yes.
So that makes sense. We can, if it's okay with the applicant, to.
If you're looking for the applicant to consent to an extension to continue this to August 1st, you have that.
Thank you. Thank you for articulating that for me. And I think there may still be some people who would like to absolutely express their thoughts and feelings. So we want to allow for that too. Gives you a chance, I think, to prepare to respond to all of these good issues that have been raised. There's also a chance to look at the studies and the additional material that we got in the last 48 hours or 24 hours. So thank you for all of this. So quick question, I hope.
Yeah, a process question.
Yeah.
So at the conclusion, so if we finish on August the 1st, then what are the next steps? I mean, you make your decision within, is it 65 days?
That's correct.
I'm sorry.
The commission has 65 days to render a decision following the close of the hearing.
Okay, so if whenever the hearing closes, be it August 1st or 2 weeks after.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
And then how is the public notified?
It will be done at a public meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission takes action at a public meeting.
So we
And
close the
notice of
public
their
hearing, we
decision is
deliberate,
published.
We decide, and it's all in the public, and,
And if we use it, we have to go online.
you can zoom in anytime.
If you're not here to you can call the office. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yes, the land use office will always have an immediate record of the agency's decision from the meeting the night before. However, the commission does file a decision in the,
So
I think,
August 1st comes, you have your meeting, you're gonna get additional information, and then you believe you'll make a ruling after that within 65 days.
the state statutes require the commission to take action within 65 days of the close of a public hearing.
You're making the assumption that it closes on the first. It
That's
may,
what-
it may.
that's all I was asking.
Yeah, it may not.
There-
That's what I was
This
asking.
is not,
That would be our goal.
yeah.
My question
So-
is, does it start at 6 on August 1st to 10? Or are we going from 7 to 10? What's the time frame on that day?
We haven't decided yet.
You haven't allocated, right? And are you going to hear the other 300 people that want to talk?
That's the
I
question.
hope they're not 300, but,
Well, there may be.
I have a sign-up sheet for folks who did not have an opportunity to be heard this evening that will be entered into the record. That would likely be the initial steps for public hearing rather than, having an entirely new sign-up sheet with folks who have spoken already, to give folks who are in attendance as well as our online attendees.
Let me add something, there may be confusion. This board does not meet privately.
Yeah.
There's going to be no private discussion. Everything happens in public meetings.
We don't talk about this unless we're in front of you.
Yeah, we can't, we don't.
That's it.
That's policy.
we do our homework, but that's it.
This time, we haven't continued the hearing.
I know,
So you're in the middle of the hearing.
We're still in the
Answering
hearing,
these
and
questions.
we need to actually make a motion to continue the public hearing to August 1st, 2024. They've got a motion and a second.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion among the commissioners? All in favor? All right, so we're going to continue to August 1st. Bring your questions back.
And we're gonna have are we gonna have a 4-hour meeting like this time, or are we gonna have other people that are gonna be putting their applications in also?
We're trying to
The
accommodate.
agenda has not yet been set.
Yeah, we're trying to accommodate you.
Yeah, because we actually use.
What was your question? Sorry, I was like in the zone. I just, yeah. See. I gave her the green light.